Welcome to the All Metal Mode podcast with your host, Michael Hare. Tune in every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern with co-host Gypsy Jules, and every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern with Matt Hoffman as we talk to guests, discuss metal detectors, equipment, and everything treasure related. Feel free to join in the discussion in the chat room during the show, and please, if you like what you hear, we'd appreciate you taking a moment to hit that like button and share the link with your friends. We hope you enjoy the show. The All Metal Mode podcast starts right now. Nokta Macro Detectors is the fastest growing manufacturer in the industry, and for good reason. Many detectorists, including Mike Hare, call us the most innovative, but we're so much more than that. We listen to and care about our customers. We also offer a wide range of detectors to fit all of your needs. Come check out all of our products today at www.noktadetectors.com. Detectors for everyone, everywhere, a lifetime.
Hey everybody, this is Mike here, and you're listening to the All Metal Mode podcast with my with my host tonight, Matt Hoffman. You can find us on All Metal Mode Facebook group. If you're interested in the UK show, All Metal Mode Podcast UK. I also have Nokta Macro USA on Facebook. All Metal Mode UK is every Thursday night at 8 p.m. GMT time. That's 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, we've got the All Metal Mode show every Monday and Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. allmetalmode.com. You can find my articles. If you go out there, if you're interested in reading my articles, again, no new updates since last night. I mentioned I've written a couple here recently. I've got some stuff I got to get published and work on. It's just been really crazy busy. You can find us on Spreaker. You can go to Spreaker. You can download it and listen to it later. You can listen to it right off of Spreaker, iTunes, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and other affiliates. Don't forget 2019 Watts Rendezvous, 3-day golden treasure hunt, June 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, Mancos, Colorado. $215 per person. Cutoff is April 1st. So I've got to apologize here. I do get messages every now and then about noises in the background. And I got one today. Somebody said, quit doing scratch-offs during the show. I don't do scratch-offs, so I don't even know what that sound was, but I will admit I'm fidgety. I also use snuff, and you can hear me spit now and then. I apologize. Sorry, but, I try to do my best not to be too noisy, but I am a fidgeter and stuff, so I apologize. How's it going, Matt?
Oh, it's going good. Just, unfortunately, you're going to get a little background noise from me tonight as I'm on the road. I got delayed a little bit in my trip out to Philadelphia here today, and so I was planning on being where I was headed already, but, if plans always went smooth, that wouldn't make for a fun day, so anyhow, I'm still driving.
I gotcha. You've got a really interesting story I'd like for you to share with everybody before we get started.
Yeah. And I don't know if I brought this up at all in the past here. So I want to say back in like September, maybe October of this past year, I was actually sending Mike, I forget what I was sending him. I was sending him something at the UPS store, and I seen a guy photocopying some stuff that looked like pages out of a book, and I saw what appeared to be a super old, or what looked like a really old schoolhouse in the picture, and I thought, well, man, I gotta, right off the bat, I said, I gotta know more about this. What is this guy doing? So I walked over to him and started talking to him. And here he was a member of Perry History Club, which is a local township right next to the city I live in. So I got to talking to him, and he said, well, I brought it up. I said, hey, I like to do a lot of metal detecting. I said, would you ever let anybody metal detect it? I said, if you let me metal detect it, I'll come out, and if I can find anything cool, I'll give it to you guys for this school. Because what it turned out that they had spent the money and were restoring the
school.
Not only the school, but restoring that whole thing. So, and they were gonna, put some cases and stuff of and they have old school desks and stuff like that in there and stuff now. So I said, I'd gladly give you anything I find for your case if you let me come out and detect it. So, and then he said, do you ever do any speaking about metal detecting? And I said, well, I mean, I like talking about metal detecting, don't get me wrong. He's like, well, we would pay you. I'm like, well, wait. I'm like, if you need someone to come out and speak at one of your meetings, I mean, I'd be more than happy to do that. I mean, trust me, the more I can talk about metal detecting, the more opportunity that may potentially open up for me with some new leads to places that, I may never have a chance to get into. So anyhow, long story short, I went out there last night and had a fantastic time, real great group of people, and, people really serious about, preserving in history and is any way they can. And, it went good. So we went over all kinds of good stuff. I got to share a lot of different types of finds and stuff with them. And, yeah, it worked out fantastic. I opened the door to some new potential leads and new places to go. And I got some people working on trying to track down some of these places out of some old newspaper articles that a buddy of mine, Tim, and we've been looking at and just not exactly sure where those were. So, yeah, it was fantastic. And then I didn't find much in the schoolyard. It probably had been detected plenty of times in the past, but I did find a nice 1901 barber dime, and so I made up a real nice plaque with the dime in a little case that's in the front, and they were more than happy, and I was happy as well. I had a really good time.
Hey,
great
Mel,
opportunity.
We've got a question in the chat for you. Now, with that cool story, you think it would be something related to that, but no, this is our group. They want to know if you're driving a convertible right now.
No. That might sound like it, so, yeah.
That's what kind of people we have that follow the show. Yeah, exactly.
My hair is blowing in the wind, guys. I can barely hear you.
So
no.
It's you know what? It's loud, but it's not bad. You guys, I hope it's not too bad, but we'll get through it.
I mean, if it really sounds like that, then I can just let you guys on the call and hang up and just listen to it later. I mean, because I don't want to ruin the podcast because it sounds like I'm driving a convertible. Although I'll say this: if I'm not talking, I'll put myself on mute so that.
Yeah, just do that. If you
bad.
got a question, come off of mute. And Bill said it's not bad at all. He just had to do it, so you're okay. You're okay. Let's get into Dorian here. I'm looking forward to this. For those of you that listened to last night's show, Keith Wills, who is really well known in the hobby and everything metal detecting, really, he works on the detectors and everything else. He said the best relic hunter he ever hunted with was Dorian Cook, that is our guest tonight. He was on last week as well. And tonight he's going to talk relic hunting. He's going to tell us stories, and he's going to give us some tips and advice. So welcome on. Welcome. Glad to have you. How's that? Glad to have you, Dorian.
Thank you, Mike. It's really good to be back.
Good. We're glad to have you, buddy. Believe me. Now, I'll tell our listeners, I've talked to Dorian. What do you say? At least every other day, I'd say, wouldn't you? We've talked just about.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. I can't get enough, and Earlier today we were talking, and Randy was being really crazy, and I said, I'll get him a bottle and he'll calm down. He goes, something about he tell me another quick story and let me go. And I said, no, he'll be fine. He goes, no, I gotta go. So I'm starting to wear him down and talk too much to Dorian. I think hey, I have really enjoyed our conversations. I've had a blast, and I appreciate everything you've shared with me. And so let's jump into it.
Okay, great. I'd like to make a couple of comments about your guest last night. Keith and I go way back, and I have to correct something. I thought Keith was an honest man until he said that I was the greatest Relic hunter he'd ever seen. I thought, oh, come on, folks, I want to let you know something. Keith is probably, as terms of those who don't hunt caches, but specifically, but who metal detect for one item at a time, like most of us do. Keith is probably, if you had to pick the top 20 people in the United States, Keith's going to be way up there somewhere in the top 20. Keith has found far more valuable relics than I have. I never could match him coin hunting. He's absolutely the best I've ever seen. If I could be called, or it could be said that I occupy the number 2 position behind Keith, I would consider that an honor. So, folks, this guy is really good. And if he says he found 9 gold coins, you can believe that he found 9 gold coins.
Yeah, I had no doubts.
Yep, but I do want to, just in case Keith's listening, I'd like to publicly clear the air on something. Keith and I, had done a lot of things together, and we had a lot of fun, a lot of detecting, and had a situation developed in the 90s where we kind of got crossways and kind of went our separate ways. And I just wanted to let Keith know that as far as I'm concerned, it's water under the bridge and we're buddies again.
Good.
So if you happen to be listening to this, I hope that'll help make you stay. But I do want to tell you, I'm going to kind of get you back a little bit. I want to tell you the very first, actually how I met Keith. I was living in East Texas near a little town called Winsboro, and that's probably, I don't remember exactly, maybe 25 miles or so from Gilmer where Keith lives. And I had a piece of property with 2 houses. One was an older one that kind of had been gutted on the inside, but stuff tore out and stuff. So I repaired it and turned it into a nice-looking detector shop and started selling metal detectors there in East Texas. In the area I was in, did not know about Keith at all at the time, and I thought, pretty much the only one. And I ran into a situation where I'd had 2 people in this 1 week called me, and they had bought a metal detector from Calico, the mail-ordered metal detectors, and they wanted to come over and have me take them out and show them how to use a detector for free. And that kind of, I'll tell you folks, that kind of thing gets under any metal detector dealer's skin. And it's really not right to ask a dealer to go out for free. If he's a dealer, he's trying to make money to survive and to stay involved in selling and using metal detectors. And when you go buy a discount metal detector, what you're doing is you're trading that discount for a lack of proper instruction on the metal detector.
Right.
And anyway, I was kind of primed because of these 2 calls. And so this big guy shows up, and I don't know him from Adam. And he has a brand new Technetics metal detector. And he boldly tells me he just got this metal detector from Calico, and he would like me to show him how to use it. And poor Keith, that 3rd episode in 1 week was the trigger, and I kind of unloaded on him. And I remember the kind of shocked look on his face. But I'll have to say that from that incident, we ended up developing a good friendship, and we hunted some really, really great sites and projects together. But
that's
like
really
I said, I never could match him. If I'd been a real competition-oriented person, I would have been badly beaten by that man when it comes to finds.
Yeah.
Have done a few more things in different areas than Keith has. I've done biblical archaeology in Israel. Been in the ruins of Sodom and Gomorrah. I helped to excavate a Roman crucifixion site at Golgotha, on the side of Golgotha, not on the top. I've been to the Red Sea crossing. We have pictures of the remains of Pharaoh's army on the bottom of the Red Sea. Done some pretty amazing things. And, Keith said he hadn't been over the big pond yet. Well, I got you beat in that area, Keith. But quite frankly, I'm still looking for my first gold coin after, 50-some years of metal detecting, and also my first silver dollar.
Really?
I've been stake bit on those two. Yeah. I found about everything else in the way of coins, but I have been snake bit. Yep, sure have.
I think.
I don't.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say,
no, that's all right.
They're really hard. Those are really hard ones to find, and they're out there. But I don't think that. That's 23 years now roughly, and I've never found either one of those. They're out there, but hey, we'll find them at some time, right?
Absolutely. You have to go on the premise that the very next signal could be what you've been looking for.
Yeah.
It's out there waiting, but it's waiting for you to swing your detector over top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to say, I totally get what you mean. As someone who sells detectors, I had my own shop. I got that often, and it kind of surprises me. The first time it ever happened, it surprised me that somebody had the nerve to do that. Hey, I bought my detector from so-and-so. When can you take me out and teach me? And, we don't have to talk about it or anything, but, if you're in the market for a detector, make sure you buy from the right company. There's a lot of them out there that don't detect. There's a lot of them out there, they're not there after. And, everything's gone to internet sales, and I get that, but, at least make sure it's a dealer that'll take your calls. If you've got an issue or something, they'll talk to you. They'll help you through it. And, that's really important, because I'll tell you what, a lot of these dealers, I've talked to a lot of the dealers, a lot of them don't even detect. Never detected. Some of them, haven't detected in 20 years. Some of them never detected. And I think if you buy from somebody like that or one of these big box stores, and my personal opinion, I think you're hurting the little guy that'll help you. But yeah,
Mike, can I jump in there on that just a moment?
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right on that. But what I would like to say and impress on anybody who's fairly new to the hobby is that the instruction. I would take my students, as I call them, when they got a detector, I would take them out to sites at least 3 times, and we would spend hours each time on the site. So I wanted to make sure that, they did not rob themselves of some good finds right off the bat by making the common mistakes that beginners make without instruction. So the point is, the information I gave them about detecting in those 3 trips was worth something. It literally knocked a year or more off the learning curve. Mm-hmm. So it was going to multiply their finds. Like I had one of my students went out, and the very first thing he dug was a man's gold ring with a star sapphire worth $3,800.
Oh, wow. How cool is that?
Yeah, how cool is that? Well, I've never done that, but one of my students did on the very first find.
Wow.
But anyway, that is worth money. And, I finally just started telling the people that would do that, I would just say, yeah, I'll be glad to take you out. I said, it's going to be $100 an hour with a 2-hour minimum.
Right.
And, because I wanted to instill in their minds that the information that I could give them on site is going to be worth something to them. It could be worth thousands and thousands of dollars in extra finds and good finds and deeper finds.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. When I was in Ohio, even though the market was just different, I sold a lot locally, and I took them out detecting. And I agree, you could take months, if not years, off of their learning curve. You show them how to use their detector. You teach them how, the places to hunt, where to hunt. Now, here in Texas, I'll tell you what, I've only sold one locally, but, I've had customers who have called me over and over and over again. And, hey, I mean, I'll be the first one to say, if you've got a good local dealer, now I emphasize good, if you got a good local dealer, I will always recommend, I want your sale, but I'll recommend you go to them. But if you don't have that, I'll spend time with you over the phone. But if you're local, of course, I'll take you out and show you your detector and help you the best I can. And I think that's really important. I hate when I see these big box companies get a sale and, these companies that are, what I'm talking about. Let's move on, Dorian. That could be a whole nother subject. Okay. We've both been there.
Alrighty. Yep. Yeah. Anyway, I thought I'd kind of got to have a little fun with Keith. So everybody would know how he and I met.
That's a great story.
Mike, I would like to start with since our subject is relic hunting, I'd like to start with the Revolutionary War, and then we'll work our way up to the Civil War.
Absolutely. I love that.
I have a Revolutionary War story. I don't think anybody will have heard. And it's to me, it's quite fascinating anyway. When I was working on material, writing my first of my 5 books, the first book would be called Kentucky in the Early Years, Volume 1, Heroes and Hostiles. And it was all about the Indian Wars period that took place in the United States between 1760 and we'll just round it off to 1800. Those 40 years were a time of great stress for the pioneers and the new settlers on the frontier. Kentucky, of course, was right on the cusp of the frontier at that time. A lot of Indian battles, combats, a lot of history. Makes for amazing reading when you put it all together. I think a number of your listeners might have read the book by Alan Eckert called The Frontiersman.
Right.
And that's an excellent place to start. It got me all fired up, and what I wanted to do was to put together the lesser known stories about that period of time. And during that period, the last battle of the Revolutionary War was fought, and it was a battle between Kentucky settlers or colonists and the British and combined British and Indian force of about 350 men. And they had raided into Kentucky and had attacked a fortified settlement, a stockade-type settlement, a little small one called Bryant Station outside of Lexington, Kentucky, 40 defenders. And they had actually failed to take the fort, thanks to primarily an unknown hero, a young man who had just actually gotten out of the regular Continental Army and had come to Kentucky. And he was just in his early 20s. And when Simon Girty, who was a white renegade that was with the British and Indians, came to the fort and demanded their surrender, and basically told them to know in certain terms that if you don't surrender and we have to take you, we're going to put you all to death slowly. And this young man, the settlers were shaking and cringing in their boots. And this young man stepped up and basically told Girty where he could go and what he could do when he got there. He said, "We're not surrendered under any circumstances, and you're going to be the ones that are going to get the hurt in here." I'm paraphrasing, of course. And Girty didn't even answer him, walked back to the Indians and British forces in the woods and told them what happened. And a few hours later, all of the British and Indians were gone. The siege, they just ended the siege after this young man, and I should have my book in front of me. His first name was Aaron, and I cannot recall his last name, but I have his story in the book.
Okay.
But anyway, the Indians and British retreated rapidly towards the Ohio River in the direction of Maysville, Kentucky, which sits right on the Ohio River on the border. And a force of several groups of reinforcements began arriving at Bryan Station because they'd gotten a messenger out about the siege. And a number of these decided to push on and not wait for the big force under General Ben Logan of 500 men They didn't want to wait because they were afraid that the British Indians would get back across the Ohio River into Shawnee territory, and they wouldn't be able to deal with them. So a force of about 172 of these settlers or colonists took off, and there were 3 colonels commanding these men, and one of them was Daniel Boone, one was Stephen Trigg. Let's see, we had Trigg, Boone, and come on, old man's memory here.
That's okay.
It'll come to me. Anyway, they pushed on until they got to the Licking River, and on the other side of the Licking River was a horseshoe-shaped valley that held some salt springs, and it was called Blue Licks. And when the water was boiled down out of these springs, it produced some of the finest salt in the world. It was better than anything they could import from overseas.
Oh, wow.
And they needed salt very badly, in those days to preserve their meat so they could make it through the winter. Well, anyway, just on the other side of the horseshoe-shaped bottom, if you can picture the 2 ends of the horseshoe, draw a line across them, and then right on the other side of that line are some low hills, heavily wooded low hills. Perfect place to set up a defense line. Mm-hmm. The settlers paused for a conference on the before they crossed the Licking River, and they could actually see some of the Indians in bright British red coats moving around from the other side on the edge of these hills. And there was a disagreement among the men as whether to push on or wait for Ben Logan and his 500 reinforcements. And finally, they chose to, thanks to kind of a rabble-rousing major, former Continental Army officer who basically accused them of being cowards, and he called Daniel Boone an old granny, and several men had to grab Daniel and restrain him to keep him from lighting into this fellow. And the men charged across the river at the ford there without their 3 colonels, Colonel Trigg and Colonel Boone, and the third one was the leader actually of the group. His name was John. All right, it'll come to me. Anyway, they went across the river, and the colonels followed after them, and basically somehow got them into order, stopped them from proceeding, as an emotion-driven mob, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And they formed them into the three companies with John Todd was the leader's name. John Todd was the colonel in charge of the expedition, and Boone was more or less second in command. Okay. And then Stephen Trigg was third. The center of their line was they were led by John Todd. On the right, they were led by Stephen Trigg, and on the left, Daniel Boone led these men. And there was on this flat plain, there was actually a finger of it that followed around the left side, or the left end of the horseshoe, whereas on the right, the hills came very steeply all the way down to the river, so there wasn't good access to go around. Boone was going to come down this finger and then do a right turn and then attack up the hill, so they would actually be attacking the British in a an L-shaped formation. Okay. Well, this red-headed major that had stirred him up there on the other side and almost got in a fight with Boone. They put him in charge of 25 men on horseback as a scouting party, and they were ahead of the 3 wings of the army. And as they started up the hill, they got close to the top of the hill, and they saw the British and Indian line, and they actually fired the first shots of the battle of Blue Licks, and then disaster struck. They received a volley from over 100 rifles of the enemy, and of the 25 men, 22 of them were unseated by big musket balls. Wow. The Brown Bess musket was being used by the British and Indians, and it fires a 74 caliber ball, which is huge. So the leader and his two survivors turned and went back down the hill. In the meantime, the Army pressed forward, and John Todd was shot in the chest area somewhere and lost control of his horse, and it ran up the hill and right into the British lines, and he was captured. And it's not known whether he died or was actually later tortured to death. On the left, it was a similar disaster. In the first volley that they received from the Wyandotte Indians that were on top of the ridge in front of them, Stephen Trigg and his men were pretty badly shot up, and Trigg was hit and killed instantly. Again, I should have had some notes on these names here, but the red-headed major that had initially got the men to charge across after their leaders, excuse me, actually redeemed himself somewhat. The army, the two wings, the center and the right, began to fall back towards the river crossing. Boone and his men, who had turned the corner and were coming up the hill, did not know this. They did not know the army was retreating. So the major rode around and told Boone what had happened, and Boone realized they had to retreat and get back across the river to the ford before they were cut off in that horseshoe. So he turned to his son Israel. He grabbed a passing empty horse that was running by him, and he told his son Israel, who was a teenager, he says, "Get on the horse and ride." And Israel said, "I will never leave your side." And about that time, he got those words out of his mouth. He was hit in the heart by a big musket ball.
Oh, wow.
And killed right in front of his father. And it was something that Daniel Boone never completely recovered from emotionally. So anyway, the battle turned out to be a complete disaster for the colonists. They did retreat. They were chased down by the Indians, who dropped their guns and pulled their tomahawks. And a lot of them were caught and butchered from behind before they could cross the crossing. And the colonists ended up losing almost 75 men out of their 172.
Oh, wow. And
thanks to one man who'd been accused of being a coward, a captain who had been accused of being a coward at Bryant Station fight, he rallied some of the men that got across the ford, and they set up covering fire for the others that were coming, and he saved probably 15 to 20 lives by doing this. So there was, a mixture of events. I mean, when you get into the personal events that happened in the battle, it's really, truly amazing. But it was the last battle of the Revolutionary War. The British Indians retreated safely across the Ohio. And, of course, the state of Kentucky wanted to make this into a spatial park, a state park. And so about 100 years ago, they did that. And they got really hasty in their archaeological work. There really wasn't much. And they jumped to some conclusions, and so they decided where the battle was fought, and they did their best to muck up the battle site. I mean, they built a big old museum and a big parking lot and a miniature golf course and a swimming pool with a big parking lot and a great big campground with, a lot of camping spaces. And in spite of their very best efforts, they failed to get any of those things on the actual battlefield.
Wow.
So they didn't even know this, and basically the state still does not know this. But when I wrote my first book and published it, I showed it to a good friend of mine, Charles Maddox, who is the editor of the Flemingsburg, Kentucky Gazette. And he's one of the best historians in the state of Texas, one of the best experts on Indian artifacts, and it goes on and on. But anyway, I wanted Charles to give me a critique of the book. And he said, "You've got the Battle of Blue Licks." He says, "You got it all wrong." I said, "Well, I went to the best sources, and the books that are written on it and everything, and pulled my material from those." He said, "No, you didn't." He said, "You missed the boat." He said, "You should have gone to the Draper manuscripts and got the eyewitness survivors' accounts of the battle. He says you've got the battle in the wrong place, just like the park does. So I took him up on that, and I went to the survivors' accounts in the Draper's manuscripts, and sure enough, the battlefield was marked in the wrong place. The battlefield was fought on the first little range of hills at the end of that horseshoe that I mentioned, and that's still, it's probably 80% undisturbed woods. So 80% of the original battlefield is sitting there undisturbed. And when they brought a bunch of metal detector guys in, probably about 10 years ago now, from New Jersey of all things. They didn't contact any of us that, local guys. They brought this team in from New Jersey, and I don't know how many of these guys were coin hunters versus relic hunters, but there was 12 of them, I think. And for a 3-day hunt, they found a total of 13 artifacts. So I had been hunting. I've hunted the fields, private fields, next to the park, because, of course, you can't hunt in the state park as far as metal detecting. And I'd come up with a lot of fired musket balls and buttons and things. And and I'd done this at the time when I thought the battle was where they had it marked up in the park behind that first range of hills. So I didn't realize that I was actually digging Blue Lick's battlefield artifacts.
Oh, how cool is that?
Yeah. And these were from where Trigg and his men, they were from where the right wing had attempted to attack the British and Indian line. So I had these, separate, and I thought that they were from just pioneer activity and things that had taken place throughout, the historic time there. Well, when I found out that where the battlefield was in the wrong place, and I found out where it was, I realized that my artifacts were Blue Lick's artifacts.
Wow.
So they had a great museum. A lot of Indian artifacts and a lot of pioneer things. They had salt making kettles, all kinds of stuff. But the one thing they didn't have was very many Blue Lick's battle artifacts. They only had the 13 that had been found up in the park itself, and that they thought were from the battle. Well, I donated 26 more artifacts to them, and
how cool!
Yeah, it was great. The head park historian ranger was just thrilled, and it really gave me a lot of creds with him and the park people, and they loved me over there for that. But I told him, I said, look, we have all these undisturbed woods, that we can go in there, right, and especially where Boone and his men came up the hill, and we can find artifacts, and they will be specifically from Boone and his men and the British Indians that fought him on that side. And he said, I'd love to do that. He said, got to get permission from the state, blah, blah, blah. And it turns out that area of the park is part of an environmental area where there's an endangered species of wildflower. And this wildflower only grows, it's a species of goldenrod that only grows in sunny areas. Well, the woods don't have any sunny areas. So, there's no danger to the wildflowers for anybody that metal detects in those woods. But the lady that ran that particular branch or department absolutely got all emotional and absolutely refused to let us do even a 2-hour metal detector survey with just me and the head park ranger.
Oh, I hate that stuff.
Yeah, I know. It's when you're dealing with state agencies, like you remember what Keith was talking about, all the problems,
Right.
There is no such thing as common sense. When it comes to the government people, common sense isn't common and never will be. You get rules, regulations, a lot of them, simply made by emotional decisions that don't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Oh yeah. I've had my experiences with that. I used to do quite a bit of riding down in Wayne National Forest, and a trail will wash out to the point people will start going around it and stuff. and they come in with environmental people and assess the damage and stuff. And here's a good one. We talked to the ranger that's in charge of the 80 miles of ATV trails, and like you'd go there and a trail would be closed down. And it's like, why is that closed down? Oh, a log or a tree come down, lightning storm. Okay, well, why don't we go cut it up and open that trail back up? And he'd laugh and he'd say, they got to come in and see what kind of damage that did, see if it hurt any species and all. I mean, ridiculous. I mean, it fell across the trail, you cut it up and you get it out of there. But, as simple as that sounds, so much goes into taking down a fallen tree. It's ridiculous.
Right.
I don't know how trails ever ended up in that place. It's hard to imagine, but yeah, so it can be really frustrating. Now we're getting some questions in chat. I know you're in Kentucky. What part of Kentucky?
Okay. I'm, if you can find Cincinnati on a map, I'm about, approximately 80 miles, east of Cincinnati. And then about 5 miles as the crow flies from the Ohio River. I'm tucked away in the northwest corner of the Appalachian mountain range.
Okay, awesome. And then, I had a question as you were talking, and now I forget.
Blue Licks is about an hour's drive from where I live.
Okay. That's neat. So you got to donate that stuff.
I did, and it was one of the rare. Really and truly, it was one of the rare situations where I got to donate without getting tied up in a big bunch of red tape.
Right.
I've given up trying to donate to the museums. Give you an example. Cincinnati has a world-class museum. They call it the Museum Center. It's in the old train station downtown Cincinnati, and it's comprised of several different museums. And one covers prehistoric times, and another covers Cincinnati's development, and another covers the Civil War, and so on. And they had this big thing in Cincinnati called the Defenses of Cincinnati. They had big banners and posters all over town, and it was all about the attempted invasion of Cincinnati by 6,000 Confederate soldiers coming up from Lexington, Kentucky. And so the defenses of Cincinnati were a 10-mile line of forts and trenches that were built across the river from Cincinnati, since Cincinnati's southern suburbs are all in Kentucky because the town sits right on the river. So the 6,000 were coming, and there was kind of a relay of farmers who rode their horses till they dropped, and then they'd tell the next farmer that Cincinnati was going to be invaded, and it started out, there's 6,000 troops coming. By the time they got to the final rider got to Cincinnati, in the amount of troops coming to invade had been increased to 60,000. And the city fathers panicked. They cabled Washington. Washington sent 40,000 troops, and they called up 20,000 militia that were referred to in the records as squirrel hunters, because these guys, could shoot the eye out of a squirrel. They were really expert marksmen. And so the 60,000 men, together with a lot of the citizens of Cincinnati who were impressed into building earthworks and trenches, built a half-circle line of forts and trenches 10 miles long, stretching from one side of northern Kentucky, the Ohio River, to the other side, the Ohio River. Mm-hmm. So these were the defenses of Cincinnati. Well, the 6,000 Confederates marched up. They sent out scouting parties. The scouting parties discovered these 10 miles of extremely fortified forts and trenches with hundreds of cannons, guns facing them. And they said, "Hey, man, we're good, but we ain't that good." So the 6,000 turned around and marched back to Lexington, and the invasion of Cincinnati never quite took place.
Wow.
There was I did in my relic hunting on the defenses of Cincinnati line, which a lot of it was in a park that I got permission to metal detect it. and it was in the undeveloped part of the park in the woods. And I had some really good hunting. I found over 1,200 artifacts from the defenses of Cincinnati. And as I got older in my career, I realized that it was the discovery of the artifacts that had so much meaning to me. The actual owning and, having them put up in neat display cases and crates packed away in secured storage, it didn't do much for me. And I thought, boy, these need to be displayed. They need to be in museums.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I decided, I went to this big deal they had on defenses of Cincinnati, expecting to see all kinds of artifacts that the museum center had from the defenses of Cincinnati.
Right.
Because those trenches and works were occupied for up to 2 years after that battle scare, because they were so worried about Cincinnati being invaded. So that made for a lot of artifacts. Mm-hmm. And I go to this presentation, pay my entry fee, and go all through it. And you wouldn't believe it, Mike. There was maybe 20 Civil War artifacts in this whole exhibit that filled this hall. Oh. And they were from Virginia. They were from battlefields in Virginia, and there was not one item from the entire 10-mile line of Cincinnati's defenses.
Oh, that is sad. So sad.
Yeah, in fact, the whole presentation that the Museum Center had done, it was really all about how bad, that the slaves had been treated by the Southerners. That was what the whole exhibit really was about. So it was a great disappointment to me. And after it was over, I contacted the director of the Civil War Museum of the Museum Center and told him, look, you guys didn't have any artifacts at all from the defenses of Cincinnati. I have 1,200 I will donate to you absolutely free. I said, but I have one condition. He says, we would love to have them. He says, what is it? I said, I will sign a simple legal affidavit saying that I obtained these relics legally, and I'll turn the relics over to you. And that's all I'm asking. And he says, oh, man, he says, this is fantastic. He says, this is great. He says, we'll do it. So I thought, well, this is going to be wonderful. People are going to come from all over and get to see all these artifacts that I found, and I'm going to have, the pleasure of having been able to make a tremendous contribution to the city of Cincinnati. So about a week later, I get this big, thick brown envelope in the mail, and I open it up, and here is a sheaf of papers. I measured them, Mike. They were 1.25 inches thick. And they were from the board of directors of the Cincinnati Museum Center, and they were forms that I was going to have to fill out one at a time before they would accept my donations. And it was absolutely unbelievable. I would have had to spend days filling out all these forms, and they were demanding legal accountability on a scale that just blows your mind. It was absolutely it was like, they completely were unconscious of the fact that I was doing them a favor. They weren't doing me one.
Right.
And so I called the director and I said, we had a deal. One simple legal affidavit. He says, yeah, I know. He said, but the board overruled me. I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. I said, well, I'm sorry too, because you're not getting the artifacts.
Right.
I said, you guys ever come to your senses and want to do something reasonable? I said, there's me and there's other relic hunters that will come forth and donate. But I said, you guys got to get real. We're not criminals. We're not grave robbers. And you got to stop treating us like that.
Yeah. We're kind of a little bit off the subject, but I got to add, that's been a question I've had, and I've asked people on the show and different things. What do you do with it? Because we only have it so long. And I have nothing like you do. Okay. But I do have a few things from a few particular sites that I think it's a shame that the public doesn't get to take part in. But, I know people who have donated to little historical societies and it gets sold off or it gets lost. And, I talked to a guy who donated time at a local historical society and I was talking to him about it and he said, well, I wouldn't donate to anything small, local. He said, we've got a basement full of stuff that's ruined from floods, that was donated to us. I know somebody who donated a bunch of arrowheads, I guess hundreds cases of arrowheads out of the Columbus area, and nobody knows what happened to them. His uncle donated them. He went in later to look at them, and years later, and they don't even know. So what do we do with our? It's a shame that these archaeologists and some of these different people, they look down on us, but they also make it almost impossible to give back to the community to see this stuff and to hear our stories. And I think that is for sure something I would like to see changed. I've got stuff from a little town. I've got, I think, it's not big, like 3 cases from a town that was gone by 1832, I believe. Very early town. It was very significant. They rallied there during the War of 1812. It had a hotel, a post office, a tavern. Pretty significant town for the time, and especially where it's at. And I tried to talk to the local historical society, and I'll tell you what, I after that conversation, there was no way I was going to donate those artifacts to them. So
and you know what, Mike? The higher up the food chain you go, the worse it gets. While I was with Garrett, I was a guest speaker at one of the biggest relic hunting clubs in the United States, the Northern Virginia Relic Hunters. Mm-hmm. And I met a guy, talking to him after the presentation, who actually had worked for the Department of the Interior Park Service. Mm-hmm. And his job was to manage a property room. And in this property room were stored collections of Civil War artifacts donated by wealthy people and collectors, who had spent a lifetime. And they thought, well, they would donate their collections upon death to the United States, and that way they would go into museums and be seen and viewed. This guy, whose first name we'll call him Jerry. Jerry told me, and the guy seemed like a real straight shooter. So I can't say this is 100% truth, but I do want to tell you what he told me. He said in the 6 years that he managed the property room, excuse me a second. In those 6 years, he saw hundreds of amazing Civil War collections donated and stored in that room. Mm-hmm. And he said, you'll never guess what became of those collections. I said, tell me. He says, not one of them ever reached a museum in the United States anywhere. He said they were given away to visiting foreign dignitaries and U.S. congressmen.
That doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't. Who knows if it's true, but it doesn't surprise me. It's a shame because there's so many people into history that don't metal detect and stuff, and I'm sure would love to go to a museum and learn about their local history and things that they'd never heard or seen, and to be able to physically look at stuff from that time period. And yet we don't have a system in place that's good. I mean, could you imagine how many detectorists would donate stuff if they knew it would be safe and it would be appreciated? It would be huge.
Absolutely. Yes, it would. Like any sports activity, outdoor recreational activity, metal detecting has its bad eggs. It has a small element of outlaws or renegades that cross the line, and of course they make it harder on the rest of us that are trying to protect, and protect our activities, our hobbies, or even as a profession. I say that because I spent a couple of years professionally hunting treasure. So, I saw it from the viewpoint of a professional as well as an amateur. And I met, just like Keith said, I met a lot of good guys. Most of the people you meet are really, they're the salt of the earth. They're the people that, that if push came to shove, they would be the last line of defense in this country. They love their country. They love their families. They're just really good people. And yet, they've been abused verbally. They've been portrayed as grave robbers, buzzards, all kinds of derogatory terms.
Right.
And they've done, like Keith. Look what Keith has done for those poor kids that have suffered the really devastating handicaps. There are many people in the metal detecting field that have done things like that. They don't blow a trumpet. A lot of times don't even know that they've done these things. I know of people. One club took every penny that all the members found, and it went for it went to the American Cancer Society, and they're just that kind of people. So anyway, I realize we're kind of getting off our subject of relic hunting.
Yeah,
so,
we're okay. You know what? I'm enjoying it. I guarantee our listeners are enjoying it. So, but yeah, that's a really neat story. So will you ever get back to that spot?
I'm sorry.
The last battle in Kentucky.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we left it there. Will I ever get back to it?
Mm-hmm.
That's up in the air. We're hoping for this lady that's the pothole in the road right now. We're hoping that she'll move on, and maybe the next person in that position will be more reasonable. Mm-hmm. Because there's absolutely no reason not to do the survey. We're not going to damage. Look, I spent a lifetime in a horticultural field. Okay. Mm-hmm. I had my own landscape construction design business. I worked with plants, flowers, everything for 44 years. So I know beyond any shadow of a doubt, we're not going to endanger this species of goldenrod by going into these woods and doing a metal detector survey.
Mm-hmm.
But see, I could assemble the proof. I could do all of that. But I have found that when you're dealing with someone who manages something based on their feelings,
right,
you're going to end up upside down, lopsided, and defeated in anything you try to do that we would call a good work.
Now, real quick, we got a couple questions, I've got a question, and Bill's got a question. He says, has Dorian ever suffered any injuries while detecting?
Who hasn't?
Right, yeah, exactly.
I managed to stick a screwdriver probe through, not through, but into a finger one time. I'm trying to, let me think, I have been in swamps full of alligators. I waded swamps full of alligators and water moccasins to get out to little islands that had Civil War activity. I waded them up to my waist.
No thanks.
I've climbed mountains, rock cliffs, been on top of the mountains that going up to 13,000 feet in northern Nevada hunting gold, and I've done all kinds of things. And it's amazing, most of my injuries have occurred at home. When I was building my house, I fell off a ladder twice and banged myself up pretty good. But I can't really think of any serious injury. Never got snake bit. I've had snake encounters and had some close ones. Had a water moccasin drop out of a tree while I was digging a mini ball one time in a swamp called Elkins Ford down in Arkansas, and I was specifically there in February, and it was 20 degrees outside, sunny, and I picked that day because I knew that the swamp was infested with water moccasins, and I knew that it was too cold for snakes, at least so I thought. Mm-hmm. So here I am, I get 50 feet inside the swamp area from my car, or from my truck rather, and I get a signal and dig a beautiful infield mini ball that they call a Georgia slick for all you relic hunters. And I'm there on one knee. I'm wearing snake boots. anyway. They were just the boots I hunted in. They actually came up to my knees, and I'm kneeling down on one knee, and I've got this beautiful bullet in my hand, looking at it, and all of a sudden, thump right beside me, and there's a 7-foot water moccasin right beside my knee. And if you've ever seen one of these snakes up close, the middle of them, man, it looked like it was 6 inches thick in the middle. They're big in the middle, and they're a very aggressive snake. This snake had been up above me in a tree where the first limb was 20 feet high, so that's where the snake had to be. And I apparently startled him by my presence, and like water moccasins will do, he just dropped, and he missed my head and shoulder by 6 inches. And had he landed on top of my head and shoulders, I would have been in a world of hurt.
Yeah. Wow. What did he take off because it was cold, or was he just lethargic enough you could get away? Or
there was a creek not far from where I was kneeling, maybe 20 feet and down 6 feet lower than where I was. And he just headed for that creek, and he jumped into that fast-moving water, which hadn't frozen, and disappeared. And I would have argued with you that every snake, rattlesnakes, copperheads, I've seen them when they're cold, and they can hardly move. But boy, this old fella must have been drinking antifreeze.
So my big question with that is, what'd you do with your underwear? Because obviously you stained them. Or I sure would have.
Don't get personal.
I sure would have. I'd probably need a trip to the hospital after that with some poopy underwear, because it would have been all ugly. My worst thing is I was in a field and behind a row of houses, and I got bit by a dog. But Bill's gotten Lyme disease, stabbed his fingers, I think he said, split his shin. I know Barb last year, the year before. And I'm not making fun, Barb. I've actually done that. I've just not penetrated. She went to push her, like slam her shovel into the ground, I believe, and hit her foot and sliced her foot open and had to get stitches. And, that sounds almost funny, but I'm telling you, if you've never done it, it'll happen. I've taken a Predator Tools shovel and hit my foot so hard I didn't know if I'd be able to limp out of there. I mean, it happens. So I'm not making fun of you, Barb. I've been there. And for those of you that think it's funny, if you use a big full-size shovel, your day's coming. It happens. Cold, and you're wanting to slam it into the ground and get that last target before you get going, and next thing you know, you missed your aim and you hit yourself in your foot. It happens, I'm telling you. But I've done...
excuse me. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Let me give everybody what could be a life-saving tip. If you're out in the boonies, whatever, and you get a severe laceration of any kind and you're bleeding badly, I carry a bottle of hot cayenne pepper tincture in my pocket with an eyedropper in it. And I carry it for two reasons. And this is a little-known trick that most people don't know, but it's absolutely true, and it works. Hot cayenne pepper is what we call a miracle herb. When it's taken inside the body, like in your mouth, it will, in a matter of 2 or 3 seconds, it will be absorbed through your mouth into your bloodstream, and it will expand all your arteries and your veins so that your blood flows better, and it will stop many times. If this is done, if a person's having a heart attack or a stroke, and you can put 2 or 3 dropperfuls of this in their mouth, it will literally stop the heart attack or a stroke.
Wow.
It'll just stop it. It is truly a life-saving thing. Now, that's on the inside of your body. So I carry this bottle, and if I go down with stroke or heart attack symptoms, or somebody with me does, they're going to get this treatment, or I'm going to get it. Because by the time we get a hold of the paramedics and they get there, a person could be dead. This will save their life. At the very least, it will keep them alive until the paramedics can get to them. Now, this same cayenne tincture, or you can go to the spice section of your supermarket and get a bottle of cayenne powder. And if you have severe bleeding, you can put this on the wound, and it will stop even vein or artery bleeding in something like 6 to 10 seconds.
Wow.
the U.S. Army has a product which is now available to the public called Quick Clot. And it's a sponge saturated with cayenne. And they're finding when the soldiers get shot, like in the lungs, or the stomach, and they need to stop the bleeding, they can push this sponge into the bullet hole, and the cayenne will literally stop the bleeding of the wound, and it's saving a whole lot of soldiers' lives.
Wow, that's interesting.
So it's a very cheap and very effective thing, to carry with you, when you're out, especially in the woods, you're out away from your car, and this type of thing. So I would highly recommend that your listeners take advantage of that information.
That's great information.
We had heard about the bleeding thing, and then one day here at the house, my wife slipped on a flagstone patio that I'd built, and she went forward and couldn't get her hands out in time, and she hit a flagstone with her forehead and split it open 3 inches. She got a 3-inch split, and I heard her scream, and I ran to her, and she looked like she'd been hit in the head with an axe. Blood was all down her face and on her clothes because head wounds tend to bleed profusely.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I did was I did standard first aid pressure on the wound and could not get the bleeding stopped. It would not stop. Mm-hmm. So I told her, I said, we got two choices. I said, I can put the cayenne on it. We had the information but never used it at the time. I said, or I can, drive you to the hospital and get stitches. But you're going to we got to get this bleeding stopped. And she said, oh, no, the cayenne's going to burn. I said, well, then you want to go to the hospital and get stitches? She says, no, give me the cayenne. So I ran the house. I gave her the cloth I was using for pressure. I had her hold that against the wound. Ran the house, grabbed the hot pepper powder, took about 4 paper towels, folded them into a little mat, and wet the paper towels at the sink, and then I sprinkled the cayenne powder all over it.
Mm-hmm.
So I went out there, and I put that on the wound, which was right over her left eye, and I counted to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I pulled the pad away, and the bleeding was completely stopped.
Wow.
Just like that.
Wow.
And I told her, I said, now we're probably going to need to at least put butterfly bandages over that, split to keep it closed up or something. And then I looked at the wound, and the cayenne had actually sealed the wound. The two pieces of flesh were together.
Wow.
And she didn't even have to have butterfly. Yeah, she didn't even have to have butterfly bandages on it. And you'd have to take a magnifying glass and hold it really close over her eyes to see even a faint trace of that scar. And it was 3 inches long.
Wow. That's impressive. I'm going to have to do that. Cayenne tincture.
It's very cheap first aid, but extremely effective, and it can save your life.
Mm-hmm. Now, does it burn?
Oh, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Rub some dirt in it.
My wife, she didn't have any trouble handling it. Where it burns is just you put the liquid tincture in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to do that for somebody, and actually stop their heart attack, which like I said, I know it would, because I know I have the reports of an herbal doctor that saved a number of people's lives doing this.
Mm.
But I'll tell you what, if I did this to you, you're going to hate me for about 10 or 15 minutes because you're going to think that your mouth's on fire. But the amazing thing about cayenne is it will not damage the tenderest cell in your body. It will not burn you. It just feels like it's burning you. It's a total illusion.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah. And 10 minutes of hot pain in your mouth is worth all of the your life. And if it can keep you, it can end up saving you a huge hospital bill.
Right. That's amazing.
And by the way, and then one more little tip related to cayenne. And we do this at our house. And I'll say this: as you use cayenne, you learn to tolerate hotter and hotter peppers. You actually end up, and the hotter they are, the better. Cayenne in your diet, it acts like nature's Roto-Rooter, and it goes in and cleans the sludge out of your arteries.
Oh, wow.
Over a period of time, it can be a great preventer of heart attacks and strokes.
Wow, that's interesting. So how often do you take it? And what, do you put it on food, or do you just put some drops in?
Yeah, I do. My wife and I eat really healthy. We have a big organic garden and all of that. We learned that if we want to have health in our old age, that we have to work on it. So we do. And I keep right by where I eat dinner. I have a shaker of basically raw garlic and powder, and also cayenne powder. And I'll sprinkle my food liberally with those two things, because garlic is a tremendous cancer fighter and preventive if you keep it in your diet. So I do that for that purpose, and the cayenne to help keep my vein and my circulation system cleaned out and healthy.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Anyway, the big thing is, that relic hunting is fun, but since we brought up the subject of injuries, and by the way, since the question only involved injuries and not disease, I didn't mention that, yes, I picked up Lyme disease on a relic hunt. Got into the Jenkins Ferry, Arkansas. I came out of the woods with 100 ticks on me. And
no.
Yeah, and some of them were those little bitty deer ticks. And I ended up with a classic bullseye rash right above my navel, and ended up getting the Lyme symptoms. But I actually found out how to get rid of it, and so I no longer have it, and no problems.
Bill's had it for years. He went undiagnosed for years, so he's having issues from it.
Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but
yeah. Well, if you'd like to do something about that, maybe we can talk privately, and I can help you.
I bet he'd like that. Bill's a good guy. He's out of Ohio. He's down around as I said, Zanesville, Ohio.
Okay, and a last name?
Bill Marsh.
Okay.
Yeah, good guy. He's always in. He's one of our regulars. Yeah. But so I'd like to talk a little bit about this Cincinnati fortification. I mean, are these sites that you'll ever go back to? Well, you found stuff outside of the park, and I was asking about that. Will you ever get back to that, and will you ever hunt have you moved on to bigger, better things, or is that things you'll go back and hunt again?
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to hunt some more right where I found those artifacts outside the park. But it was a tobacco field, and the lease owner changed. It was leased by a farmer, and I had permission to hunt there. And I had a friend visiting me, and I took him there. And the two of us were hunting, and up drives a tractor, and I'm thinking it's, the guy that I had permission from. So I wave, and he comes up, and it's a guy I've never seen before. And boy, he just chews me out one side and down the other. And tells me that he's the owner, quote unquote owner. He's not really the owner. He's the lease. He has a lease on the land. Mm-hmm. And he's just really offended that I'm there with my metal detectors. I tried to explain to him, well, we had permission, and we didn't know that the lease had changed. He said, if you'd come to me, I would have given you permission. I said, well, if I'd known you owned the property so that I could have come to you, right, and where you were, I assure you I would have. But he wasn't having it, and so I said, okay. I said, we'll just, we'll leave right now, and we'll never darken your doorway again. We won't trouble you anymore. But he just wanted to vent, and so you run into people like that occasionally. So that's the situation as far as going back to that field. There are still a lot of artifacts there. I'm convinced. Yeah. I would love to hunt it.
Yeah, that's interesting. You need to get you a wig and a fake mustache and some glasses and go back. See if you can get permission again.
Well, it's yeah. If I were of an evil bent of mine, I could go in there at night and hunt it. But yeah. I don't do that.
No, not a good thing.
If I give my word to somebody that I won't come back to the field, then that's the way it's going to be.
Right.
Right. So.
Now, what about the fortifications of Cincinnati? Is that something you'll get back to, or?
Well, I would have. I actually just not too long ago, last year, I made a trip, and it was the first time in several years that I had been to the fences. And I went to this wooded area of the park, assuming that nothing had changed, of course, and got into the woods and was hunting for about half a day. And then I come upon this sign on a tree, saying that you have to have have to have a permit to metal detect. And that was something brand new. Yeah, brand new. Then I found more signs saying that. And so I checked into it. I thought, well, okay, I'll get a permit. And then I found out that the stupid county is only issuing permits to bona fide degreed archaeologists.
How sad is that?
And quite frankly, the Cincinnati treasure clubs and stuff have hunted that place to death, and it is extremely hard to find artifacts now. So basically, all that this county has done is close the barn door after the horse got out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Me and Bill Marsh have a story like that. That's a funny thing, closing the barn door after the horse got out, because him and I got ran out of a site. It's a long story, and our listeners, I'll tell you sometime. It's kind of a funny story, but it's the first time I ever met Bill, and if this guy pulled up on a tractor, bent out of shape, and if I wouldn't, the guy was so rude that I would have dragged him off that tractor if Bill wouldn't have been with me. He had me pretty upset. He was quiet, and I had permission for it. I didn't know things had changed. Of course, nothing was written about the change, and all of a sudden, we're looters in his eye, pretty much. So, okay, so we're an hour and almost 20 minutes into this. Do you mind sharing some tips with? Yeah, it goes quick when you're having fun. I'm telling you, I just looked and I thought, oh man, how we been at this for an hour and 20? Do you mind sharing some tips and tricks that, some things you could tell the listeners that might help them beat the odds, so to speak?
Okay. Now, when you say tips and tricks, there might be a lot of those in different parts or areas related to relic hunting. Have you got anything specific as far as, are you talking about for finding sites or for actual detecting the relics? What do you think is most important to you?
Well, most important to me, what's your advice on tracking some of these places down? I mean, I think that's where I struggle, and I'm somebody who'll go to the library and stuff, but is there any special ways to find some of this stuff you can share?
Yes, there is. We can start. Now, you're talking about unworked sites?
Well, I mean, let's get into the research aspect of it. Do you have any tips and tricks like research? How can you go about finding unworked sites? How can you find, how do you go about researching a known site and getting on some stuff that nobody else has been on? Or do you see where I'm going with it? Yeah, I do.
Okay. Of course, one of the biggest areas about all relic hunters find out about really quick once they get started is what we call the ORs, the official records of the war of rebellion, as they call it. And you can go online for those. And there's basically 128 volumes, and they include all the reports of the officers down to the rank of lieutenant on both armies that survived the war. And it includes correspondence between generals and various officials of towns and things like that. And there's hundreds, millions of leads in the ORs. And most of the relic hunters know that, and they research them. But there's a source of leads. This is not really, a relic hunting 101. This is for your graduate relic hunters, or more or less people that have already developed certain research skills. But I'll give away one of my secrets here. Can't take it with me, as they say. In the libraries of major universities, most of them, if not all, at least in the Civil War theater states, have collections of original diaries and journals written by the Civil War soldiers themselves, handwritten in their own handwriting.
Mm-hmm.
And they have these in their book collections. You can't just go in and pull one off the shelf. You have to ask and get permission to view the section or to view what they have. The last time that I did this, I was at Southern Methodist University in Dallas, and they had a collection of about 20 diaries and journals at the time. And, of course, more have probably been donated since then. But anyway, these guys, the handwriting is a little hard to read. Everybody has a different style. But with practice, you can figure it out. And these are sometimes gold mines. You may read one diary and journal that has nothing that helps in any way, and the next one may be full of leads. You come across the guy that's keeping a daily diary, and he says, June 13th, 1863, we camped where Lone Wolf Creek runs into the Bosco River about 300 yards down from the railroad trestle. And boom, there you go. There's a site that is probably not going to be in the ORs. It's just a campsite. I say just a campsite. It's a campsite, and you practically have an X marks the spot.
Right. How
and just one, yeah. And there are. Well, I'll give you an example right now. There is a huge valley about 25 miles south of my house. And beautiful valley, a lot of basically corn, soybeans grown in the valley, and so on. And we know for a fact that an entire Union division camped in this valley for a winter. It was a winter camp.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. So, has it been found and worked to death? Absolutely not. We know it's out there in those fields. We've got permission from. It's amazing that a lot of these fields are owned by a family of 4 brothers, and they were really nice. They gave us permission to fields. We talked to people who were Indian artifact hunters, because these fields have a lot of Indian artifacts in them. And we talked to some Indian artifact hunters that had picked up 3-ring drop mini balls.
Oh.
But this valley is huge, and they couldn't remember where they found them. So there's a clue, but we have not found the site. We've gone through a lot of the fields, 4 of us, the detectors, and not found a single mini ball. So we're not on the right place yet.
Right.
But
as soon as you hit it, you're going to know that.
Yeah. Let me tell you one of the biggest hindrances to success in relic hunting. There are certain opinions that seem to form in the relic hunting community, and they dominate the thinking of the relic hunters, especially the newer ones. The newer ones go to, they go to a club or an event, or they associate with older relic hunters, and you hear, oh, the glory days are all gone, Now you're lucky if you go out just to find a mini ball or 2 or 3. And that becomes the new standard for success in relic hunting. And what's happened is the relic hunters become indoctrinated with an idea that is absolutely not true, but because they believe it, they're turning it into a reality.
Mm-hmm. I believe that. I believe that absolutely can happen.
Yeah. I don't think we talked about this in the first show. If we did, you can stop me. But my current relic hunting partner, you mentioned. A big guy.
Are you talking about the first time you guys went to the battlefield and you'd only find a couple?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I won't go into it again. I'll just.
I agree that I think you. I believe. I believe that 100%. You got to be in the right frame of mind, and you can't listen to what the next person told. Along the same lines, I'd like for you. You didn't share this the first time. Share the story about your U.S. buckle. I think that really reiterates the same.
You want a U.S. buckle or a CS buckle?
I think the U.S. buckle where you went to the house that had burned down and it was hunted out.
Oh yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, this involves the battlefield of Perryville, Kentucky, which was Kentucky's biggest Civil War battle. In fact, the most violent battle event in its history. And it was one of the 20 biggest battles fought in the Civil War. And by the way, just let me digress for just a second. There are about somewhere between, I don't even know the exact number, haven't kept up lately, but somewhere around 25 national battlefield military parks when it comes to Civil War, like Gettysburg, and Antietam and so on. Mm-hmm. And then there's another probably 300 now state parks that cover battle sites. Perryville is actually a state park, not a federal. And Perryville is the only state park that made the top 10 battlefield list last year. All the rest of them were federal. But anyway, people tend to see that as, that's the Civil War plus, some campsites. And it's not. There were 22,000 known reported battles and skirmishes in the Civil War. And there were probably that many more skirmishes and smaller battles that were never reported. Mm-hmm. And you add to that hundreds of thousands of camps. And there's probably a third of those camps and battle sites that have not been found yet.
Yeah.
So when you start, when you get to the point where you walk around thinking, oh, everything's all worked out, you created a false reality, and you're not likely to be successful at ever finding one of these unworked camps or battle sites. The first thing is you have to understand the reality is what I said is true. There are thousands and thousands of sites that have not been found yet for various reasons. When I moved here onto my property, this area is noted for really good springs in the mountains. And I have a mountain, I own part of a mountain, a big part of a mountain behind my house where I built my house.
Okay.
And I went about a third of the way up the mountain, and I was looking for springs. I'm looking for a spring that I could dig a pond to hold water and then pipe it down to my house. Mm-hmm. And I found a kind of a little flat area that kind of protruded out from the mountain about a third of the way up. That around here they call that a bench. And there was a mushy spot in the middle of this bench. And so I took a shovel and popped out a big shovel full of dirt, and the hole filled up with water in 3 minutes.
Okay.
And the water was good sweet water. We let the mud clear and everything, and actually tasted some, and it was great, fantastic, which is good because here in our area you could have a sulfur spring or an iron spring. This was not either one. This was really good artesian spring water.
Okay.
And I rented a loader with a backhoe, and I dug me a spring pond. And in the process of digging out the spring pond, I saw some rusty pieces of metal sticking out of the dirt. Excuse me. And I thought, well, what in the world up here in this remote part of the mountain here in the woods? What's going on? Why is there metal here?
Right.
So I got my detector, and after I'd finished the spring pond, I came back up and started detecting. And right away, I pulled the visible pieces of rusty metal out, and they were pieces of broken cast iron pots. And as I metal detected, I found there were metal signals all around. And there was a lot of these broken pieces of cast iron cookware. Certainly looked like they dated back to the period of the Civil War or earlier. And then I found an eagle cuff button.
Oh, wow.
And then I started finding flat buttons. Got one the size of a 50-cent piece that was silver plated.
Oh, wow.
And I started finding fired pistol balls. No rifle bullets, only pistol balls. And I noticed there was this mound about, 18 inches tall and about 10, 12 feet long. And there was a giant poplar tree about 3 feet thick growing out of the very middle of it. So it'd been there a while.
Okay.
couldn't see any hole that the dirt came out of to make this mound. It was obviously man-made. I found camp forks and spoons like soldiers would have, Civil War soldiers had. They matched the pictures, in the relic identification books. And I found broken glass, old bottles, patent medicine bottles and things, whiskey bottle. And I came to the conclusion there had been a party of Confederate bushwhackers camped here during the end of the Civil War. The bushwhackers were deserters from the Confederate Army, and they turned to making a living by robbing farmers, pretending to be a military force. And the problem got so bad that the government ordered the federal cavalry to wipe these guys out, absolutely to, attack them, kill them, and if any survived the attack, to execute them immediately. And I think this is what happened here. I think this was maybe 4 or 5 of these bushwhackers were camped up there on that bench because there was a spring. They could get water.
Right.
And I think they got drinking or something, got a little loud, and way down below them, the old sunken road runs through my property. And I think a Yankee cavalry scout heard them up there, went back and got the boys, and they surrounded the camp and attacked, and they had a pistol battle. And I believe that mound is probably a mass grave for the bushwhackers.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
Anyway, there's absolutely no records of, any action, Civil War action there, okay? Mm-hmm. So I literally, by accident, found an unworked Civil War site. Now, I'm in a mountain valley, and the mountains are about where my house is, are only about 1,500 feet apart, from base to base of the mountain. Well, the mountain directly across, you walk out my front gate, and you walk another 100 feet, and you're starting up the other mountain.
Okay.
And I had permission from the owner to hunt, and I find this trail about 3 feet wide, and it's walked into. I mean, literally, it's scooped out, and it heads all the way, heads up the mountain from the bottom. And it was made by horses going up and down.
Right.
And so I started looking around both sides of this trail, and I started finding Civil War rifle pits. And I've heard people say, everybody says, these holes that you find on the side of the hills are rifle pits, but they're not. They're just where trees have rooted. Well, actually, if the dirt around the hole is stacked on the downhill side, it's a Civil War rifle pit.
Oh, interesting.
And they were scattered. I knew how far apart the regulations would, were for rifle pits. So I started moving in the direction, when I found one, I would move, and sure enough, at the right distance, I would find another one. Mm-hmm. So that told me right there, before I ever took another step, there is a cavalry camp up on this mountain between the trail and the rifle pits. And then I dug a drop pistol ball in the middle of the trail and started to work my way up the mountain. Found a spot that had tent bottoms. It had been leveled, and the tent bottoms were raised about a foot above the surrounding dirt, and they were the size of a military tent. And I thought, this is going to be sweet. I got to be the first person here. And, I detected those tent bottoms and didn't even find a square nail. There wasn't a metal signal one.
Do you think somebody hunted it, or?
No, it'd never been hunted.
Nothing dropped.
If he'd been hunted out that bad, I could have found signs of digging, but there was nothing.
Gotcha.
Sometimes they would be ordered to, start building a camp or make a camp, and about the time they get it done or in the middle of doing it, orders would come and they take off and never come back to that site. So you have these sites with rifle pits and tent bottoms and things that have absolutely no metal signals or artifacts. I won't say absolutely no. You might hunt and find 1 or 2 or 3, but
they weren't occupied enough.
Yeah, here's the point. In a camp, nobody digs all the square nails. Most of those stay in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not hearing your square nail sounds on your detector, then it was never really used. They were there for a little while, but it's not going to provide you, 2 years of great honey.
Right.
One of the problems. Oh, here's a tip for those of you that are looking for sites in the woods. And you can go into an area that was known to have Civil War activity. And if you're willing to risk dry runs, that is, you hunt all day and find nothing. If you keep doing that in areas that have Civil War activity, and you do it especially on the hills and woods within, let's say, a few hundred yards of a major water source like a creek, sooner or later you're going to hit a spot that has never been touched.
Mm.
But most people, if they're not finding something the first 10 or 15 minutes on the relic field, okay, let's get out of here. There's nothing here. And most hunters today, especially your newer ones, don't have the self-discipline. They don't have the ability to set a goal like, I know there has to be some unworked camps on this range of hills, and I'm going to hunt till I find them. Mm-hmm. The rare guys that do are the ones, guys or gals, the ones that do, they're the ones who hit these camps, and if they can keep their mouth shut and, not take anybody to it that'll betray them, so to speak, or betray their site, they could have a couple, 3 years of fantastic hunting before they can work that camp out.
Yeah, that's amazing. Bill said, boots on the ground, swinging in and out, best research ever. I agree. I think there's a lot to be said for that. Me and Bill have talked. He does very similar to what I did in Ohio. Is go find old house sites and fields where they've been gone 100+ years, and me and Bill do it a little different. He'll take off and go walk, and he's found some really great sites, early sites, predate the maps and stuff. Now, what I do is I'll overlay the maps, find where a house was in the 1800s. I'll go hunt it, and while I've got permission for that property, I will look for earlier sites. And I don't know that there's a wrong way or right way there. I think we both kind of get. I've come across many sites before that predate the Ohio maps and stuff, and I know Bill has too. So I think they both work. I think boots on the ground are a great thing, but I think you can save time by doing a little research and a little overlaying and stuff. Myself, I mean, that's how I prefer it. But I know Bill sure has accomplished a lot and found a lot of great finds.
Yeah, of course, I'm not talking about sites that show up on all maps and things. I'm referring, of course,
yes,
to sites that were never marked down anywhere. The best you can hope for is to get a verbal reference to them in, some piece of research like the ORs or diary or something like that. And, some guy says, well, like we have one where it's talked about Camp Garrett. And we have looked for Camp Garrett in the area where this guy says it is. All the logical places, there's not a lot of water sources, so it has to be near a water source for the soldiers. And there were over 1,000 men camped there, and we can't find it.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah. And I won't say we can't find it. We haven't found it yet.
Yeah. Big difference. Yeah. Give up. Yeah, I think, I think last week you made the point, or it might have been one of our conversations that, you'll get some dry runs, but keep at it. And your point was, I think you can go out and find a couple. I'm not sure I'm saying this correctly or exactly, but you can go out and find a few Civil War relics and stuff and go out all the time. But if you do the little less known and you do some research and you go, even if you have some dry runs, if you find that right spot, you could be pulling relics off of it for years.
That's true. And there's a couple stories, true stories that really illustrate a point. One of those was the story of John Marks in Memphis, Tennessee. John found 500 U.S. belt buckles. And they were in beautiful condition. And here's how he found them. He ran across, in his research, a reference to from a Confederate officer that they had captured 500 Union soldiers and that they had brand new equipment belts. And this was early in the war. So the Confederates were not exactly hard up for belt buckles as they would be later on. And so they hated anything U.S. And they hadn't learned at that point to turn the buckle over so that it said SN, which they said stood for Southern Nation. They did that later in the war when they were getting desperate for belt buckles. They take the U.S. buckle and turn it over. So they hated the U.S. buckles and they loved the equipment belts, so they stripped the equipment belts of the buckles. And he found a reference to that and a clue to where they should be. So he had to drive 2 or 3 miles down a four-wheel drive, a logging road that ended in kind of a cul-de-sac, in the woods. And obviously it was a trysting place for the kids. There was all the debris, you find in those places, a lot of beer and soft drink cans and everything else. So there was so much metal just visible, laying on the ground and stuff. John would park his truck in the cul-de-sac, and then he would walk out about 75, 80 yards away from this circle of trash, and then he would start hunting. And so he made 3 trips to the area and didn't find a trace of anything that would lead him to this, where they stripped all these belt buckles. So the third time, he'd had another day of failure. He'd been out 8 or 10 hours, he said, and he was coming back as he was heading towards dark. And he gets within sight of his truck, and he still has his detector on, and it sounds off. And he's thinking, oh, yeah, another soft drink can on the surface. And he walked on about 10 or 12 feet, he said, and then he thought, no, I can't let it. I got to go back and check. So he goes back, and the signal sounds like it almost gives him the old Garrett's. It would give you a kind of a double signal if you were within an inch of the artifact, when you passed over. It kind of go blip, blip, instead of blip, beep, blip, blip. And so anyway, he gets this double blip and it says it's shallow. So he takes his foot and he kicks at the leaves, expecting to see a crushed soft drink can. And there's a U.S. buckle looking him in the eye. And what John had done all 3 of those trips, he had parked in the middle of the camp and walked out of it before he started hunting.
To get out of that trash. He never suspected it being all that trash.
Right.
Wow.
And to get those 500 buckles, he had to clean that area of trash.
Oh.
A lot of work, but which one of us wouldn't do that for 500 U.S. buckles?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was invited into his home. He had a big chest, like if you ever seen these blueprint drawer chests. The door's only 2 or 3 inches high.
Right.
It was designed to hold blueprints, and he had this thing stands about 6 feet, 6 feet and a half tall, and it's just one of these little drawers after another. And he just kept pulling them open and pulling them open. Each one of them was full of beautiful U.S. buckles.
That's amazing.
So
yeah,
it truly is. So there's a lesson that see, his perseverance, kept on, and you have to be a history detective and say, if the clues aren't adding up, why?
Right.
If I'm in the right area. A well-known relic hunter up Northern Virginia told me a great story. He was a dealer, and he'd sold this new guy a Nautilus metal detector, and the guy wanted him to take him with him on their next relic hunt. He said, okay. He says, now, we may not find anything. We've been looking for a camp for a couple of years, and we haven't been able to find it. So they had to do the thing about driving down some logging roads and stuff, and they finally got as far as they could in the truck. And they got out, and they weren't even detecting. The dealer was leading the way, detector over his shoulder. And they get out, they walked about almost 2 miles, and they come out on this top of kind of a bluff that falls into a deep gully with a nice creek at the bottom of it.
Yeah. And
the dealer looks around and he says, this is a good place to start hunting. And the new guy, is trying to tune his new Nautilus metal detector, trying to remember what the dealer had taught him, and he's not having much luck. He's got the detector coil sitting on the ground trying to tune the detector. And finally he says, "Oh, Reggie, my new detector won't tune." And he says, "Let me see it." He said, "Let me see it." He was working fine in the shop. So Reggie grabs the detector, and that's not his real name, by the way, but anyway, Reggie grabs the detector, pulls it up, puts the coil up in the air about waist high, and he tunes it right up. He says, "There's nothing wrong with this detector." And the new guy said, "Well, it wouldn't do that for me." And he said he got a little bit suspicious, so he stuck the guy's detector down there where he'd been sitting on the ground, and swung it back and forth a couple of feet, and it sounds off immediately. And this kid had walked 2 miles back into the woods and set his detector coil down on top of a Virginia State Seal belt buckle.
That's beginner's luck right there.
Absolutely, and that's how they found the camp they've been looking for 2 years.
Oh, wow. How cool is that? How cool is that? They say beginner's luck and stuff, and I think that's part of not being, it's more about you not being, what am I, you know what I mean? They haven't been exposed to the negativity yet. Everything's possible. Dig it. And they're so, new people to hobby are so eager to dig and stuff. And, that's amazing.
Sure.
What else did they find out of that camp? Do you know?
Yes. They literally, by the time they got done with that camp, they hunted it. It was really a big camp. They were right at the edge of it. But the odds, the guy should have bought a lottery ticket that day because, the odds of setting your detector down, that's your first relic hunt ever, and you set it on top,
right?
Of a buckle, funny. And that's why he couldn't tune it, because of the metal under his coil.
Right.
So they had actually, he said they spent a couple of years cleaning out that camp, and they got just about broke a record. I think they had somewhere around 3 dozen Virginia State Seal buckles came out of camp.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And you're talking about a very, very valuable buckle.
Mm-hmm.
But these kind of things do happen, and they can still happen. Mm-hmm. But, you can't go, well, let's talk about human nature a moment. Human nature follows the path of least resistance. And for you newer relic hunters, if the spot can be seen from the road, it's been hunted to death. Yeah. If it's easy to get to, you can drive a back road, park your car and get out and walk right into it. It's been hunted to death. Mm-hmm. If you want the sites that are going to give you the thrills and the great finds and all the bragging rights that go with them, then you're going to have to make a lot more effort than just following the path of least resistance. You're going to have to hike into remote areas. You're going to have to go where 90% of the other relic hunters didn't go because it wasn't easy.
Absolutely.
And I'll say this, for those of you that want to just go back again and again to the fields, that everybody's worked, got a suggestion for you. I posted it on our forum page just the other day. When you walk into the field where everybody else walks into it, you park your car and generally everybody enters the field in a certain place. Don't just walk out in the field and start swinging your detector. Stop right there at the entrance and ask yourself, where was I about to go? When you realize the natural inclination you would have had to go in that direction, if it's straight ahead, probably most of the time, until you get out in the field. Mm-hmm. Don't do that. Don't do that. Turn to the left or the right, bell detect a little while, then make another left or right turn that defies logic. Because very few people hunt that way, And therefore, if there's any hot spots in that field that have been missed, that's how you're going to find them. Mm-hmm. Most people don't stop to think, I'm doing the same thing everybody else has done.
Right. Yeah. They might have walked right past a hot spot, or 20 yards to the left or 20 yards to the right. There was, stuff there. I agree. I'm not saying I always do it. I've caught myself doing the same thing everybody else does. And, sometimes you got to stop and think about it and come back at it in a different way. Or, I couldn't tell you how many times I've done that. I've been striking out, and I'll take off my headphones and just look around, think about it. And where's other people hunted here? Where's, and head off another direction or somewhere else. And, I agree. People we're lazy by nature. And I think if you want the good stuff, it takes work. I wrote a story many, many years ago, about getting to those hard to reach places. And even coin and relic hunting at a school or a park, if you got a great big bush, crawl under it. If that place is giving stuff, I guarantee, I can about bet you nobody's ever crawled under it unless it was me. I hunted a school once that we pounded it and pounded it. I became so determined to find something out of it. And around the back, there's just a little bit of woods, and it was really grown up and brush. It was heavy brush, a lot of thorns, and it goes off a steep hill. I mean, it instantly starts downhill where the woods is. And I thought, nobody's ever hunted that. I'll about bet you. And we found all kinds of stuff back there. Silver coins. Never found us. Actually, I found one silver coin in the front of the school, and around back I found tons of stuff. Indians, wheat pennies. My brother actually found a Spanish 8 real, a new, like 1870s, not an early one, but still a very cool find. And I found, sometimes you got to take your headphones off, pay attention, look at the land, and go at it. Anytime I've had property to hunt where there was an old house site, if I've got I've got permission for it, I'm not going to leave there without inspecting every little hill, every little bump that looks like something could have been there. Because many a times it's led me to sites that, they weren't on the map. They were pre-map. I mean, and when you get on one of those, they're good. So I agree. I think
I would love to hunt with you, Mike, and watch you work. I think I could learn things about hunting the house sites from just the tips and things you're giving. You're getting me thinking already.
Oh, I think I'd be learning from you. I don't know what you're going to learn from me. Hey, I'll tell you a good tip that Bill Marsh, that's always in our chat, gave me that was absolutely brilliant. I haven't got to really do it much yet, because he told me after I moved here, but we were talking about field hunting one time on the show, and he, how to go about it and different things. But, he said, always hunt in the turns, let's say 50 yards south of where the house said, or 100 yards or something. And then it turns, the field ends. So they turned and come back down, because it, as the tractor's coming down and picking stuff up off the blade, when they turn, it'll come off a lot of times. Stuff gets spread, but, field hunting's easy. It really is. But if you want to get into field hunting, there are some tips and stuff. Everybody's heard it on the show, but there's definitely some things I could help you with. And, not much.
So you just, Bill, through you, just taught me something. The tip about the turns, it had escaped me. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's very, very, Bill's very knowledgeable. He's been doing it a long time, and he's got a lot of experience, but I'd never thought about it. Now, I had hunted a lot of them on my way in and out, but, and found a few things. stuff can get spread 100, 200 yards. I mean, I guess it could get taken out of the field by the tractor if it gets stuck right. But, I tell a story that I was hunting a site that was right on the road, And there was a hill probably a few hundred yards back, and it just looked like a possible another site. And as I'm getting real close to it, I'm realizing there wasn't anything there because I'm not hitting the iron. But I found a large scent. Well, most likely that was distributed there most likely by the tractor. But what I do is I hunt ground zero and then work my way out. And I call ground zero is where the house sit and you're just infested with iron. And they're kind of easy to find because you'll come across that iron even with the no plow and stuff anymore. I've been on sites where I'm on it a few hours and then before I finally find a little piece of glass or pottery. So they're getting harder to spot. Yeah, they're getting harder to spot, but you'll know with that iron. I mean, your detector will be going crazy with those iron, and so we do that.
Can I expand a point that's connected directly to what you just said?
Absolutely, please.
Okay, up in Ohio, in Darke County, there is a town called Port Recovery.
Yeah,
and at that site is the site of what's called a battle. Called St. Clair's Defeat.
Yep.
Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. Matter of fact, a few weeks, maybe a month or so ago, me and Matt did a show on the Indian Wars of the late 1700s and Matt Anthony Wayne, and we talked about. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, just for the sake of the listeners that don't know it, it's still the worst defeat ever suffered in U.S. military history by the U.S. Army.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. General St. Clair, camped his troops on just outside the Wabash River bottom, just up on the, there's a little. Won't call it a bluff. At the top of a bank. I don't remember off the top of my head. I think about 10 or 12 feet above the bottoms, the Wabash River bottoms. There is the flat area, and he camped there, and then his Kentucky scouts, those crude talking, crude dressing, a lot of them illiterate guys, tried to warn St. Clair that they had seen over 3,000 Indians putting on war paint, doing the war dance and everything at their villages, and that they were going to be attacked. And St. Clair refused to believe it. Basically, I wrote about this in one of my books in detail, but the scouts and the Kentucky militia went to the colonial officers, the Army officers, the lower ranking, and begged them to convince St. Clair to prepare for an attack. So finally, St. Clair, because his officers asked him to, agreed to setting up a defense for the camp. So they just started to pile up brush, for things to hide behind, to fire from, and this type of thing, get the cannons prepared. When these 3,000 Indians came screaming out of the bottoms, the Indians had them surrounded. And it was an awful slaughter. There were, out of 1,200 soldiers, there were 800 and some killed outright on the site. And then there were 400 women camp followers. And camp follower was a nice sounding name, of course, for the ladies who serviced the soldiers in various ways. Right. Everything from doing their laundry to catering to their romantic inclinations. 200 of the 400 camp followers were also slaughtered, and the rest fled back to Cincinnati, leaving a trail of bloody snow and frozen bodies because more died on the way that were wounded. So it was a real mess all the way around. Well, anyway, they managed to build a town of Fort Recovery right on top of St. Clair's camp where the battle took place.
Okay.
So, seriously, all the downtown central buildings, they're built on the battlefield itself.
Wow.
So I wanted a few artifacts. I'd read about this, and I thought, wow, this is the greatest defeat in military history. I want to go dig some musket balls from St. Clair's defeat. Mm-hmm. So I drive up there cold turkey. Man, there isn't any place that if I discover the town's built on top of the battlefield. So I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to save the day here? I've driven all this way, and I'm driving down Main Street there, and I look, and here's where two streets, or a cross street, little cross street, crosses the main street there. There's a freshly bulldozed lot.
Oh,
Just
no.
bare dirt.
How lucky.
And I thought, oh, wow, if I could just get permission. And I found the owners, and they said, sure, go ahead, hunt all you want. And I thought, well, this is great. So I get in there, and man, oh, man, I was using a Fisher 1260, I think. Yes, Fisher 1260.
Good one. Good. That's a good one. I had one of them.
Oh, yeah. I dug thousands of coins and artifacts with mine. You still got it. But anyway, I started hunting, and Mike, the trash signals were so close together. And, the constant noise of all this trash. And I hunted for 2 solid hours, and I had nothing. And I'm getting very discouraged, but I wrote an article about the psychology of treasure hunting, and don't talk yourself out of success.
Right.
And I also tell all beginners, when you go to a site, old house sites and things that are heavily trashed, don't even worry about the first 2 hours. Just do the first 2 hours. Don't worry if you don't find anything. But allow yourself 2 hours to start to get accustomed to the conditions of the site. Well, that's about what it took me, 2 hours. And then suddenly I heard a funny signal that was a cross between something iron and something non-ferrous. So I thought that's probably, some kind of a thick piece of iron that's turned up a certain way, whatever. So I dug it, and lo and behold, I had a barber dime.
Not what you were looking for, but a cool find.
Yeah, not what I was looking for, but a cool find.
Mm-hmm.
But then I started hearing more of those same kinds of signals. And I started digging more and more silver coins. Started getting Indian head pennies. Got a couple large cents. And make a long story short, it was a record day for silver coin finding. I found something like 32 or 33 silver coins. Wow. In one of the time in that lot, plus not a handful, but probably half that many Indian head pennies. I found more silver than I did pennies. I found gold crosses, religious items, medallions. It makes me think they must have tore down an old church there. But the big news was I found 5 big 74 caliber Brown Bess fired musket balls from the Battle of St. Clair's Defeat.
Wow. How cool is that? Yeah, that's, I don't live in Ohio anymore, but I get back, and that's one of my goals. I'm going to be determined to find something from, those Indian wars, because that's, why, laziness, life gets busy. And sometimes it's a lot easier to walk out into that field that a house was and go find you some large cents and musket balls and stuff. But, I'm kind of getting, I think we all, and I'm sure you'd agree and understand, we kind of, we evolve, like anything else. No matter what you do in life, you do it long enough and you evolve. I remember when I found my first silver coin and, and how that evolved to, okay, if I find one more mercury, I'm going to puke here. Let's, got into relic hunting, and you keep evolving, and it's like, don't get me wrong, I found some amazing stuff out of the fields. I'm ready to start those dry runs that turn out into something big eventually. I'm okay. I'm getting to the point where I'm okay with that. Because there's things that I want that I know are obtainable. I'm there. Now, I'd like to talk to you about Fort Recovery because, I got some I'll tell you another time, or we'll talk off air about that. But I did talk to my brother, and he doesn't remember where. He's got a friend who has property up by where one of the forts was. I thought he said Recovery, but now I don't know. But his friend told him he's got permission for a lot of property. He doesn't metal detect, he hunts. And he's close friends with them, and he's got a lot of access to a lot of property around where one of the forts was. Or real close to the forts is how he put it. So, and I could have done that last time I was back, but I chose to stay. Well, when you're visiting, you got to see family and everything, but it was hard to get away because, that's over an hour away, and that was going to cut into my metal detecting time, but I will get back to that. Or get up there eventually, hopefully next time I'm back and I feel the crops are out. But
and by the way, for those who are interested in fort hunting, the absolute best place. Where do you think the best place to hunt on a fort site is?
I have no idea. I've never hunted a fort.
The dump. You look for the dump.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, we friend of mine and I gone to a fort site down on the Natchez Trace.
Hold on, Dorian. You're kind of cut up or breaking up, or I'm not sure if you got your head turned away. I'm not sure.
Okay, I've switched positions. Is this better?
Yep, way better. There we go.
Okay. We found the dump site from a Revolutionary War to about 1812 fort along the Natchez Trace, and man, oh man, did we take the budgets you were talking about, Mike, like the USA. And Peter Buds with a cannon, and the circle above it, and the eagle on it, sitting on the cannon and stuff like that. Oh wow! We came out of there. We found the dump about halfway through the day, hunted till it got too dark to hunt, and we had over 75 buttons, and there wasn't one that would book out at less than $35 or $40 a piece.
That's funny you say that, and I should have known that. Greg Shipley, I think I'd mentioned to you, he's at one of the, I don't think he's at the fort, at one of the forts, but more like a camp from the Indian Wars that, up in Ohio. And he's been doing amateur archaeology and doing digs, and man, is he pulled a lot of good stuff out of there. A lot of good stuff. But they come across it from metal detecting. He come across it and he suspected it was a dump site and he started digging it. So, yeah, I can only imagine. I'll tell you something else real quick. We don't have to talk about it. Something I would love to find up in Ohio is one of the blockhouses. Blockhouses weren't meant to be long-term. A lot of them, they mustered there and different things. I believe stuff was stored at some of them. So I would love from War of 1812 to find a blockhouse. The county I'm from, there's they know that there were 12. The last time I checked, I want to say that they knew where 3 were or something like that out of those 12. Wow. And I think if you could get on an old blockhouse, boy, that'd probably sure be something. Could be something. Matter of fact, I think I put some guys on a blockhouse, and the local historian agreed. I'll tell you, here's a great story for you. You'll love this, Dorian. I put a book together years ago, just places in Miami County where I'm from. I overlaid the maps. And I used to give them away and stuff to people, bought the detectors and sold a few. I just did it more for fun. I had some free time on my hands. I had some time, and I did it, and something I wanted to do. And a couple guys bought metal detectors from me, and they lived there in Miami County, and I think I gave them a book. And so the one went with his farmer friend who knew all the farmers, and he said, well, Mike's got something marked here in this pasture up here. And he said, Oh, I know that guy. I can get you permission. I'll let you in the pasture. Their first time ever field hunting, they found OVM, at least one OVM buckle. They found the cannon and with the eagle and all that. They found early coinage, and everything they put together. And talking to a local historian, he said, I think this is a blockhouse. I think you found a blockhouse, as much military items as they found. So yeah, that how you ever going to come back from that? When you go out to a field site, and you usually in Ohio, you'll find a couple large scents and some musket balls, some flat buttons, and their very first time out, an OVM buckle. How's that?
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, that's it's there. I mean, that's the thing. That's the element that has kept this activity, if you want to call it that. I really hate to call it just a hobby, because it seems like it almost trivializes it. It's so much more because, I consider myself to be a history detective. As you learn to research, you get better. And if you keep researching, you actually move beyond just being a researcher. You become a history detective. You start to be able to spot clues and follow those clues that lead you to, truths. Truths. I mean, in the sense like if you can find out where, for example, everybody thinks that a certain fort is at the junction of a creek and a river. And it turns out that it is, but not at the creek and river that everybody thinks it is. It's another creek and river 2 miles away. You see, well, that's a truth that was lost. Everybody's they're, as the old saying goes, they're in the right church but the wrong pew. And they know that there was a fort. They know that it was at the junction of a creek and a river, and they have the wrong name.
Right.
And so, so a history detective says, okay, if it's not there, then we have to find it where it's not, where it's, where everybody thinks it's not. Mm-hmm. And so you start looking there, and lo and behold, you find this lost location.
Yeah, very I think that's really cool, and that's kind of a question I wanted to ask you on your research and stuff, because I'll tell you something I watched many years ago that really opened my eyes. I was watching a documentary on History Channel, and this guy was hunting in a field across from this Civil War park, where I don't remember what battle or anything. I don't know if you ever saw the show. And come to find out, the whole battle was in this field. They don't know if any at all was actually in the park. And my point is, the point, what I took from that is the Civil War wasn't that long ago. I mean, I consider that modern time. To some extent. I mean, I know we didn't have cars and stuff like that, but that site was lost. I mean, how does something, you're talking about all those millions of leads in those books and stuff. How did they get that wrong? And I think things get lost to history really easy. And part of it is it wasn't as important at the time as it is now. So then you take, let's take the Indian battles of the 1790s in Ohio. How many of those do you think are accurate where they say they are, or they've got monuments and stuff? I tend to think there's a good possibility a lot of them are incorrect. But in your research and you getting boots on the ground, have you found that a lot, that things aren't where they said they were?
Well, absolutely. A large percentage of my best finds were made by simply coming to that conclusion and then acting on it, and lo and behold, proving it. Mm-hmm. A good example is what we talked about earlier. I'm the only person in history so far that has a book out that has the correct location for the Blue Licks battle. When I published my next edition of the book, I went back and rewrote and included pictures and everything. I rewrote the whole story of the Blue Licks battle, and I apologize to my readers for being wrong. But I said that's what a history detective does. If he comes to the wrong conclusion, and he simply makes a correction, and that's all you can do once you've But I learned a lesson about depending on other people's material. When to really nail it down, you need to go in and get any eyewitness accounts that are written, and that it certainly was the case with Blue Licks. So by doing that, like I said, I've got the book out, and they should be selling it in the park gift shop, and they did. I sold in 12 kind of sample copies, and 9 of them sold in 4 days. But then I got extorted by the person that ran the gift shop, who told me if I didn't give them a much bigger discount in the books, they wouldn't carry the book. And I'm trying to tell her, look, this is the only book that you've got that will have the correct side of the battle in it. She didn't care. She wanted a certain profit margin, which I could not give her. It would have left me making less than $1 per book, and she would have been making nearly $20 a book if I yielded. And she said, "Well, I'll see to it that you never sell any more books in the Kentucky park system." And she did.
Oh, wow! How messed up is that?
But that's the kind of things you run into. See,
yeah,
it should be about truth and about the history. People should be able to come to that battlefield park and buy books that give them the most accurate information that's available on the battle. And here was an opportunity to do that. The head park historian agreed with me completely. He said, "You're right. This is where it is." And like I told him, I said, if we can get on this site, I said, you'll probably double. I said, just the 2 of us hunting. I said, I'll teach you how to hunt. And just the 2 of us doing a survey could probably double or quadruple the museum's artifacts of the battle within a few hours.
That's a
if
shame.
I'm right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a
so
shame.
Anyway, okay, the bottom line is, guys, we're going to run into obstacles. All right. But we have, I've kind of adopted an Appalachian favorite saying for our forum page, which is we dig the Civil War headquarters. Mm-hmm. And the motto that I've told everybody we're going to have is "Can't is stuck in a mud hole."
I like that.
We're not going to bow down at the altar of can't. We're going to bow down at the altar of it's possible, and we're going to find a way to do it.
Right. I agree. Absolutely.
That attitude is 50% of a successful relic hunter right there.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes you got to work it, huh? You got to keep at it. You got to find your way in. That's pretty cool. Yeah. It was something I want to take a quick pause here real quick to say this. He just Dorian just mentioned it, but let me tell you guys, we've got some people in chat tonight, some great people with some great groups. I mean no disrespect. I have my own groups. Let me tell you about my new favorite group. We dig the Civil War headquarters. It's ran by Dorian. He just set it up a week or so ago. He has added some incredible articles, some great information. You want to go check that out. Trust me, it's not your typical group. A lot of information. I love reading his articles. You read one of his articles and tell me you don't want to buy one of his books or all 5 of them. I'm telling you, I can't wait to get the books, Dorian. You got to let me know when they're available. Your style of writing.
I'm waiting on a mailing address. I'm still waiting on a mailing address.
Oh, did I never send it?
Nope.
Oh, well, here's me dropping the ball. yeah, I just blown away, and so check it out. I'm telling you, it's worth it. It's not your typical Facebook group at all. I mean, he's got a lot of stuff, a lot of articles. You're gonna have to spend a little time reading them, but I'm telling you, start reading them, you're not going to put them down. Just absolutely, yeah. Greg says I'm joining the page.
Right.
It's on Facebook, Bill, and I had trouble. Dorian, I meant to tell you, I think one of the problems is that group is for some reason hard to find. You got to search for it under groups, and it's we dig the Civil War. Let me make sure we dig the Civil War headquarters. And look at the top of your Facebook, hit groups, search for it in groups, and it'll come up that way. I got to pause everybody because I am texting you my address right now, so I don't forget. But yeah, it's a great group.
I also need Gypsy's address because she won books too.
Okay, yeah, she was excited too, for sure.
Yeah. I'm still waiting on some reprints from the printer on a couple of the books, but I'll go ahead and send you copies of the ones I have in stock here.
I would absolutely love that, and then we can start talking about the books. And hey, while we're kind of taking a break, I just sent you that text. I don't want to put you on the spot if you can't do it or if you're burned out. What do you think about next Tuesday?
Right now, it's not a problem. Tuesday's a real good night for me. I don't have anything regularly scheduled or anything, so
okay,
it works pretty good.
Let's get you back Tuesday. Let's touch on another. I think we could have you on, well, forever. I mean, you got so many good stories, guys. Him and I have talked hours upon hours, and it's hard for me to put down the phone or trying to. I should be getting off the phone because Randy's being crazy, but I keep trying to manage him because I don't want to miss the rest of the story, so to speak. And Dorian, I've really enjoyed our conversation. I'm glad I reached out to you. It's been just incredible. Real quick before we go,
we've had Mike. Let me just say this: it's not been one-sided. It's not been the Dorian show. It's been Mike and Dorian with dialogue. We're back and forth, and you're telling me things you've done and trips, and like I said, I really am interested. I think you've done a lot more overlaying in this type of thing than I've done. And I do understand in principle the value of doing that. So I'm sure in the future I'm going to learn things from you. So, I think you'll agree with me on this, that there's not a person involved in melee technique that even an old relic geezer, like I like to refer to us old guys, can't learn from. If you think you know everything, if you stop learning, then you better check your pulse because you died knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. One of the things you're going in your old age in this hobby is continuing to learn new things. The anticipation, it's like a tonic, that keeps you younger than you would be otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree. You're never going to stop learning. I think if you stop learning, you're hurting yourself. That's all you're doing. Okay. Let me see if I can, I'm at the page and I'm trying to get a link. So, I'm just going to share the group to my timeline. So if anybody wants to pick it up, just go to my timeline and it's posted. So, because it is difficult to find. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because Bill already posted it in the group. So it is now posted in a group. It's posted on my timeline. I highly recommend you go out there and check it out. I'm telling you, it's like no group I've seen. Dorian is adding all kinds of good stories, valuable information. My favorite group. It's what I do. I get woke up and I take the dogs out and stuff, and the first thing I do is I open it up and see what's posted and what's been going on, and read some of your stories, Dorian. Bill just joined.
I'm sorry.
Bill
Greg.
just joined, and then Greg asked if you got his message. I'm guessing he's asking through. He probably messaged you through Facebook, I would assume.
I don't have it open right now. I'm just here, on my flip phone talking to you.
He'll check it out, Greg. He'll check it out and get back with you, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Greg,
right after the show.
Yeah, Greg's a great guy. He's down in Mississippi. I'm sorry. I think Mississippi. I always get it. Yeah, he's down in Mississippi, I think. He was on the last show, and Bill Hayes said he just joined too. You guys read some of his articles and tell me you don't want his books now.
Oh, Bill and I go way back.
Oh, good deal.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
We're 2.5 hours into the show. Real quick, one more thing. I got one more favor before we get out of here. Tell me your best day of relic hunting. It doesn't have to be about the finds. It can be about, what made it your special day. Did you come across something unhunted or your best sight, something, what you got? I bet you've got a great story.
Yeah, I'm actually, I've hunted 140 sites in 22 states, Civil War. So I'm not sure that I can pin down the greatest without giving it some thought, but I'll share one story with you that was certainly a great day. There was, let's see. There was a battle in Kentucky called the Battle of Richmond. Okay. And this is, of course, not Richmond, Virginia. This is Richmond, Kentucky. And it was the worst defeat for the Union Army in the entire Civil War.
Oh, wow.
Wasn't as big as the Battle of Perryville, but out of 6,500 Union troops involved in the battle, over 4,500 were either, most of them were captured, but including several hundred killed and several hundred wounded. So, there was a very significant battle. And there was a precursor to that battle just a day or two before, as I recall. It was called the Battle of Big Hill. And Big Hill is anything but a hill. Big Hill is a bona fide, genuine Kentucky mountain, Appalachian mountain. And it's a rocky affair. It was kind of interesting. The road was a really windy, twisty thing that had been there forever, probably since the Civil War, going up the mountain. Actually, no, I'm sorry. It was not the original Civil War road. That ran down through a valley and up another part of the mountain. But they decided to put in a big highway, and they had to do a lot of blasting. They had to blast, hundreds of thousands of tons of rock out. And it was funny because some of the guys that were on that project literally quit and would not go back on the job site when they started the blasting, because they were setting off blasts in these rocky, outcroppings and things to make way for the road. And they were blasting out dens of rattlesnakes, and there were rattlesnakes flying through the air everywhere.
Oh no.
And it just absolutely terrified some of the guys that worked for the construction company, and they just quit. It was a funny story. But anyway, they did not, thankfully, impact the battlefield that actually happened on Big Hill. And there was a historical marker talking about the battle that took place up there. But nobody had ever really found the exact place of the battle. Nobody, had ever displayed or talked about any relics they found there at the time that I went looking for that lost battlefield. And I found it that day. It was funny because I got permission to hunt from the landowner, and it was a wooded area. And he said, but he says, you need to know. He said, you go back in there, son. He says, you're going to see you might see 6 or 7 6-foot rattlesnakes at a time back in there.
Oh, no.
And, well, I'd never seen that in all of my hunting, and I thought, well, I'm going to give it a shot. And if I start seeing rattlesnakes, then I'll turn around and leave. I'll give up on the project. But I'm not going to leave here without at least trying. So I started working my way back in from the where I parked from the road near the historical marker, and I worked my way, not getting anything for quite a while. And I must have walked half a mile. Never saw a snake. Didn't see any snakes. Didn't see any evidence that there ever been any battle. And I came out on a bluff overlooking a big valley, and that valley is where the military road had run down through it. And certainly I knew there'd been action on that road, but I was a good piece away from the road. It would have been quite a hike down the mountain to get to the road, to see if the hunting was going to be good down there. Here I was on this bluff where the mountain dropped off. I'd been walking on fairly level ground up to that point. It was like I was on a ridge top.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I'm going to start. I'm going to hunt here and see if there's anything. They might have had some scouts up here or something. And I started detecting, and boom! I mean, just instantly, I checked the reading. I thought, oh yeah, it's going to be a shotgun shell. So I started, digging, and the signal it sounded real shallow. I thought, oh man, this thing's not more than an inch or two deep. It's got to be a shotgun shell.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't. It was a complete Sharps carbine bullet from the Civil War that was dropped.
Nice.
And since there'd been a lot of cavalry, it was basically a cavalry battle. That would make sense that the Sharps carbine bullets would be there. And actually, that was the very first artifact I found of the day, and I filled my pouch before the day was over because I had found the Battle of Big Hill, and I had the thrill of being the very first person to do so because there wasn't another dig hole. The relics were, the pattern of the relics, everything told me that this was an unworked site.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, at the time I was living in Texas, and my then wife was from a little town of Sand Gap, Kentucky, which was not only a few miles away from where I was in Big Hill. So she was up there visiting her folks, and I'd taken off the day to go relic hunting, and found the Big Hill battlefield. I write about that battle in detail in my book called Battle to Battle, about the Kentucky's major battles. So that was a big thrill. When you find a lost battlefield and realize you made history, that was 1979. And to show you the evolution for you younger folks, the kind of things that can happen as the years go by, the decades pass, and you keep adding more and more experiences, to your resume, so to speak. I've been to Scotland 3 times, and I've hunted in Scotland, and I've found 400-year-old coins. Had a ball, loved. I could immigrate there because the hunting over there is fantastic. But I came across in Scottish history a battle between the Roman soldiers under a general named Agricola and several of the Scottish tribes. It was not yet the country of Scotland. It was an area that was inhabited by 5 different tribes. And these 5 different tribes spent their time fighting each other until Agricola, with a force of 20,000 Roman soldiers, invaded the Highlands of Scotland along the coast. If you're looking at a map of England and Scotland, just look on the right side of the coast. It would be the east side, I guess, the east coast. They came up the flat area, the plain area that bordered. It was a border between the sea and the mountains, where the Highlands began. And for the first time in history, the 5 Scottish tribes united, and they had chariots with these big blades on the wheels and things, and they came out of the Highlands and they attacked the Roman force under Agricola. And he had, just offshore, he had a fleet of ships following his army, with extra weapons, supplies, food, and all that. Mm-hmm. So they fought the Battle of Mons Graupius. And the site was lost to history, and the British archaeologists and historians have been looking for this site for 200 years.
Oh, wow. Wow, how cool is that? And you found it.
Well, I found it in 2 hours of research.
Huh. How incredible is
because
that?
If they, immediately, the fact, and quite frankly, it's a little hard for the British archaeologists. I mean, this is just an opinion I'm offering, but it seems like it's a little hard for the British archaeologists to think out of the box. And so all the effort they'd put into locating the battlefield near the town of Aberdeen, Scotland, had not paid off, not one artifact.
Hmm.
So I thought, okay, they're looking in the wrong place. It had to be somewhere where the fleet of ships was close by. Agricola would have probably been on a ship. And so where I discovered, in the way that I have not gone out and detected it, okay? I'm just telling you, I've done the research, and I know from experience that I'm right on the money. But if I tried to tell the Brit Archies where it is, they're going to say, you don't have the credentials.
Right.
They're not going to listen. They're not going to listen to what, I can show them. They're not going to test my theory. And so the battlefield and the artifacts that are there are going to remain slowly, decaying away, so to speak. You have to understand the battle. The only account of the battle was written by a Roman called Tacitus, who was the son-in-law of Agricola and the official historian. There's a saying that the victors write the history. Mm-hmm. And they fought an all-day battle. 30,000 future Scots of these 5 tribes came out of the hills, and they united for the first time in history. They fought these Roman legions, or these legionnaires in the plain. And according to Agricola, they killed 10,000 of the Scots.
Oh,
Not that Agricola, Tacitus. They killed 10,000 of them. And and they claimed that their casualties were less than 200 Roman soldiers. The Romans did their thing with the shields and making the turtle and stuff like that, to protect themselves from the spears or with their stuff. But the big problem was the Picts had these big swords that you call the forerunners of the claymore, and they would chop at the Romans, and they would hit the Roman shields made out of brass, and they would penetrate and stick in the shield, and the Scot warrior would have to pull that sword with great effort out of that cut it had made in the shield. And while he was doing that, the Roman soldier had his short sword in his hand, and he reached around his shield and stuck it right in the side of the Scot. So that was an interesting thing of what happened. But anyway, here's my point. Tacitus says they only lost 200 men. They have a 20,000 man army. They have the fleet offshore, and yet immediately Agricola turns around, stops his whole campaign to conquer the north part of Scotland, turns around and hightails it back to England. Does that sound like what you would do if you'd won a great victory?
Right. Nope.
Right.
Not so much.
So the bottom line is Tacitus wrote what was politically correct. The truth was the Scots came down, they kicked Roman butt. You see.
Wow. I got
so
you.
anyway, the bottom line, while everybody's looking for it, I'll say this publicly, maybe somehow it'll filter back to them, and they'll actually make an effort to check this out. The Scots set up a standing stone. That was the way they memorialized events. And sitting out in the middle of the plain, just opposite Dundee, Scotland, is a big standing stone. And there's a little hill in Dundee, and I'm convinced it's where Agricola stood on that hill and watched the battle from the top of that hill with his fleet right behind him.
Oh, wow.
And if they'll go out in that field and start checking around where that standing stone is, they're going to realize why they haven't been able to discover the Battle of Mons Graupius is that they're over 50 miles too far north.
That is cool. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm deviating from Civil War history just to point out to you what can be done as you become a researcher. You know, and if you learn to think outside the box, you can make great discoveries. You really, really can.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, you know, the big thing is, Mike, for you guys like you and me that are racking up decades of experience, if we don't help the younger hunters get the vision and get them to set their goals much higher than they are right now, then they're not going to do great things. They're going to have just a hobby, and they're going to find some coins and relics and stuff like that. And they're going to miss, life's going to pass them by. They're going to get old like me, I'd love to be 20 or 30 again. Wow. I'm pushing 72 now. But you can tell, if you can't tell that I haven't lost my passion for metal detecting in all that time, then you're not trying.
Right.
I
agree.
But here's the thing. At 72, I'm not interested in digging Lincoln pennies. All right?
Right.
I'm interested in making great finds in the time I have left. I want to take every bit of experience I've gained, and every tip that I can get from people like you, other hunters. I'm getting tips off of people that are on our forum. I'm learning right along as they're learning. We're sharing, information.
Yeah, I love that. I do.
And I've got projects hanging fire, that I want to do. There are Civil War mysteries. 1,200 state seal buckles were made for the Arkansas Little Rock Guards. They go into the war, and yet less than 11 of those buckles have ever been accounted for. Right.
Yeah. We won't go into that, but we've had pretty extensive talks about that, and how interesting that is just it's mind-blowing, the stuff you've shared with me on that. And I love talking to you, Dorian. I love having you on, and I just want to keep doing it if you're okay with it. If you need a break for a week or something or whatever, let me know. But as of right now, let's do it again next Tuesday. We literally have to get off of here real soon because we have a limit. We have 3 hours, and we are 2 hours and 43 minutes into it. So I could keep going. I'm just listening, taking it all in, and loving it. But unfortunately,
let's make sure. Let's make sure poll your audience and make sure that they want to continue. And if I can be of value, and I'm not starting to bore anybody or along those lines. I really want to contribute something positive. As long as I can do that.
Yeah. It's so much fun. Bill already said awesome show. Come back, Dorian. Greg Weems said wonderful show. I think everybody else, I think a lot of people tapped out for the night. I know a lot of them will be downloading it this week. I don't know if I told you this, we get a lot more people listening in through the week rather than the night we go live. I mean, we have a good group. We'll have many people listen in, but as the week goes, the number will just multiply and multiply. So I'll get feedback, but there's no doubt in my mind we want you back. I know I want you back, and I can promise you everybody else does too. So I'm looking forward to it. I don't even know what to say other than I love it. I enjoy talking to you. You're just wealth of knowledge and history and passion. Yeah, Donnie, everybody's saying come back. Everybody in chat saying come back. So,
well, that's really encouraging. I really appreciate that from everybody. I really do. I love to share. There's two types of people in the world, basically. They're givers or takers. And, I'm really trying to be a giver.
mm-hmm.
So,
oh, yeah, for sure you are, right? Yeah, no doubt. And you're a mentor and definitely somebody to look up to. I mean, you've taught me so much in the 2 weeks that we've been talking.
Yeah.
I mean, wow, 2 weeks and I'm just learning and learning. I'm sitting here, I was thinking I need a pencil and paper. I need to write some of this stuff down he's talking about. This guy's a genius. So I've enjoyed it, Dorian. I really have, and I'm sorry, Matt. For our listeners, Matt dropped out. His phone charger broke. He had to call he's texting me throughout the show, and he was having issue after issue, and I'm like, man, don't worry about it. Things happen. Yeah. So, Dorian, let's call it a night. Sir, again, I appreciate it so much. It's been so much fun, and thank you for coming on. I'm looking forward to it next week. We'll come up with something to, I feel like we could do a whole nother show on relic hunting or a show just on Civil War. I think it's just endless with you. I think we could just go on and on and on. We could probably do a show on one particular battlefield or one particular campaign, or I'm sure we can find something to talk about. So,
well, and remember that, I've got, the good book says, let another's mouth praise you, not your own. And I try to take it to heart, but I really do have an extensive amount of information. A lot of it has not really been published in any, major venue in any way. But on the subject of the Knights of the Golden Circle and the treasures they hid, that's a possible show, you might want to consider, because it is related to Civil War, very much so. And there's, we could do a show on Jesse James, because Jesse James is one of his grandsons. Jesse Lee James III was a personal friend of mine until he was murdered by an ex-CIA man to keep him quiet. Yep. But Jesse was a very close personal friend, and I was able to go to California and visit him, and he opened all the James family albums to me, and so I have a lot of information that disagrees.
Love that.
Yeah, disagrees with history. When we start talking history, you're going to find that I'm going to tell you things that are not, accepted history. Like Billy the Kid taking the aliens and crushing Bill Robertson, dying at the age of 94 in Mexico, things like that.
A show I'd like to do soon. It doesn't have to be next week. I would like for you to talk about. We had a guy on talking about it, and I think you could, for sure, without a doubt, you can add to it. Misplaced or out of place archaeology. Things that don't belong. You got into some of that earlier today with me. We were talking about the Roman coins on the beach and stuff, and I would love to do a show with you about that. You threw in some things today that just absolutely interesting. We got to get off here. We are
okay.
We are quickly running out of time. Dorian, again, thank you, sir, so much for coming on. The listeners who stuck around all night, we really appreciate it and hope you enjoyed the show.
We do.
Absolutely.
Tell Grady I'm expecting great things out of him on the forum.
You know what? He's a newer detectorist. Been at a couple years. He's a great guy, a friend of mine, and I think somebody you could really mentor. He's a really good guy. I think the world of Greg and everybody actually that's in our chat and stuff. We got some great people. My friend Donnie in Ohio's on. I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. Donnie that's in the chat, I've hunted with him. He's a great guy. Bill Marsh and all of our regulars, just great people. And so, yeah. Okay, everybody, thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate it, and have a good night.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
All right, there we have it. I said goodnight. I forgot to go through my thing here real quick. We Dig the Civil War headquarters. Okay, you definitely want to check that out. That's Dorian's Facebook page. Next Monday night will be Keith Wills again, and Tuesday it looks like we've got Dorian lined up again. What another great week! I mean, I hope you guys aren't tired of them. I know I'm sure not. I could listen to these guys that have been doing it longer than I've been alive. I could listen to them over and over. I hope you guys feel the same. Zero Discrimination on Facebook and YouTube. Girls Rock Metal Detecting, Facebook and YouTube as well. Ohio Relic Hunting on Facebook. Dirt Pirates Detecting, again on Facebook. Huntress Kimmy and Clodhopper Scott on YouTube. Love those people. Everybody have a good night. Have a good rest of the week. We'll talk to you soon.
Nocta Macro Detectors is the fastest growing manufacturer in the industry, and for good reason. Many detectorists, including Mike Hare, call us the most innovative, but we're so much more than that. We listen to and care about our customers. We also offer a wide range of detectors to fit all of your needs. Come check out all of our products today at www.noctadetectors.com. Detectors for everyone, everywhere, a lifetime.